Chapter 1722. The east was dark, and the west was bright. Although Feng Qingshan did not think about the blessing when he used Pangu's split the heavens. After all, even without the blessing, this technique was still very powerful in terms of attack. As the strongest offensive technique born in Pangu's chaos world, coupled with the results of Feng Qingshan's constant deduction based on the eternal blessing, this technique was no weaker than other techniques. Most importantly, at this moment, as Feng Qingshan used the split the heavens axe technique, although he did not have the blessing of the Bell of Chaos, he still received an infusion of power that was not inferior to the blessing of the timeless Arkansas regarding this. Even Feng Qingshan himself was very surprised. He sensed a little and realized that this power did not come from elsewhere, but from the nearby Pangu's chaos world. After all, Pangu's split the heavens was the #1 offensive technique in Pangu's chaos world. And now, Feng Qingshan was fighting for Pangu's chaos world. Moreover, Feng Qingshan was a creature born in Pangu's chaos world. Although he had severed the karma, if he was defeated, not only would he suffer, but Pangu's chaos world would also suffer. If Feng Qingshan was far away from this world, it would be fine. At this moment, the distance was so close that others could not sense it, but as the will of the great path of the chaos world, it was constantly watching his battle with Yin-Xie-Ho. Therefore, when Feng Qingshan used the split the heavens axe technique, it was naturally blessed by the origin of heaven and earth. For a moment, Feng Qingshan's muscles were coiled up, and his qi and blood rushed to the sky. His entire body emitted endless pressure, and explosive power filled every inch of his flesh and blood. Endless power was born out of thin air. With a wave of his arm, his palm fell and slashed down. There was nothing else, just a simple slash, but it seemed indestructible and unbreakable. A simple and unadorned stone axe condensed and swung out in a mysterious trajectory. The sharp light of the axe made it impossible to capture its trajectory. Strength, boundless sharpness, indestructible and indestructible. It was as if everything in the world would return to chaos and be destroyed by the divine axe. Ding! Bang! Rumble! The long spear and the divine axe collided, causing a terrifying explosion. With the collision of the two as the center point, two terrifying forces instantly erupted. One thrust, and the other cleaved, shaking the 9 heavens. That scene was truly terrifying. In other words, the place where Feng Qingshan and Yin-Xie-Ho fought wasn't in the chaos, but in the boundless void. Otherwise, this move alone would have been enough to tear the primal chaos apart. Even now, the two of them hadn't strayed too far from the Pangu chaos world. As a result, the shockwaves caused the chaos world to tremble. Every living being in the desolation realm felt extremely uneasy, as if a great disaster was about to befall them. Fortunately, the origin will of the great Tao of the chaos world was not to be trifled with. Instantly, he activated the formation and managed to maintain the situation. Feng Qingshan naturally didn't know about this because he was completely immersed in the battle against Yin-Xie-Ho. After casting the splitting sky axe technique, Feng Qingshan didn't wait for the result and continued to attack, because he knew that it was impossible for him to win against Yin-Xie-Ho with just this move or in a short period of time. Therefore, after casting the splitting sky axe technique, Feng Qingshan cast the Dutian Thunder. This time, he borrowed the thunderous flag from the timeless arc, and with the support of Pangu's great Tao of chaos, its power was actually above the splitting sky axe technique. For a moment, a flag fluttered in the wind above Feng Qingshan's head. When the flag was unfurled, there were different forms of divine lightning. There were 5 elemental divine lightning, yin-yang divine lightning, sky demon divine lightning, Sanqing lightning technique, universal divine lightning, heaven lightning, demon slaying divine lightning, purple heaven divine lightning, etc. Within the flag, there were countless types of divine lightning. Every type of divine lightning was the best among all the lightning techniques. When the flag was unfurled, all the divine lightning gathered together and a grayish divine lightning was formed. Within the divine lightning, it was unpredictable, and it wasn't a complete world anymore. Instead, it was a boundless void that emitted a horrifying pressure. The surrounding void was distorted. Great minds think alike. When Fang Qingshan was casting his skills, Yin Xieho didn't stop either. As the spear trembled, it was as if all the demons in the world were summoned and added onto the spear. With a thrust of his spear, a painting that resembled a supreme treasure of Buddhism, the myriad Buddha greeting painting, was slowly unfurled in Yin Xieho's hand. What was different was that this painting naturally depicted various evil spirits with different postures. There were thousands of them, from ancient times, immemorial times, ancient times, medieval times, and modern times. 1,000 evil praise. For a moment, the two of them exchanged blows. Other than not using their strongest trump cards, they were doing their best to maximize their combat strength. Divine abilities, cultivation techniques, spiritual treasures, and experience were all used. Logically speaking, although Fang Qingshan had the timeless arc, he didn't have any weapons in his hands. If he were to fight barehanded, he should be avoiding the sharpness and attacking the vital parts. As for Yin Xieho, with a spear in hand, he should be attacking in a big way. However, in reality, it was completely the same. Fang Qingshan's palm turned into an axe, then into a knife, then into a sword, but he walked the path of an upright one. He slashed and stabbed like lightning, and his strength split Mount Hua. He pierced through the void with irresistible force, and he used his strength to suppress his opponent. Yin Xieho, on the other hand, used a strange trajectory to attack Fang Qingshan. His attacks were tricky and strange. The angle and speed of the spear were beyond imagination. When the spear struck down, it was as if a venomous dragon had come out of its lair. The two of them exchanged blows so quickly that other than the people involved, it was hard for others to catch a glimpse of it. Ding, ding, ding. In the blink of an eye, the heavenly evil Marquis's spear and Fang Qingshan's palm collided again and again. The concentrated sounds made it impossible to tell how many times they had collided in that short period of time. The extreme evil spear was tricky, while the Tao-seeking reincarnation fist was righteous. When they clashed, it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. It was truly a case of meeting one's match and meeting a talented general. Although Yin Xieho was still confident that he could defeat Fang Qingshan, he could accept the title of the strongest divine emperor. His reputation is indeed well-deserved. The number one divine emperor lives up to his name. Good, good. This Yin Xieho is indeed formidable. He was indeed worthy of being the saint of the heavenly evil clan. Even when he was releasing his qi and blood, his spear techniques were still weird and deadly. Although he was using a spear technique, it was no different from using a fist or finger technique. The spear seemed to have become a part of his body and could be used as he pleased. Fang Qingshan's eyes flickered. Although he knew that Yin Xieho wasn't simple, he only knew that his reputation was better than meeting him in person. Fang Qingshan couldn't help but nod his head. Chapter 17:23. Although Fang Qingshan and Yin Xieho were both amazed by each other's battle prowess, their attacks didn't weaken or slow down at all. Instead, they were pushing themselves to the limit, becoming stronger as the opponent became stronger. Every move they made was extremely dangerous. The two of them were like dancing swords and sabers. Neither of them dared to be careless. After all, even though they seemed to be equally matched, the slightest mistake could lead to a difference of 1,000 miles. The slightest mistake could determine life and death. But at least they could attack and defend. At their level, if they were to fall into a disadvantageous position, it would be as difficult as a mortal trying to climb the heavens. Once that happened, unless they used their trump cards, they would be in real danger. One careless move, and they would lose everything. Or even death. Forget about Fang Qingshan. Yin Xieho had old ancestor Tian Xie and the entire heavenly evil race behind him. Even if he won, he would hold back. He would not take his opponent's life. After all, he did not have the peerless emperor dynasty behind him. The strongest sect, Tao sect, still had to rely on him. Once he killed In Sieho, it would infuriate the heavenly evil race. Even if they did not come out because of the origin of the Great Path, the two-faced Dizun, and the Monarch's Alliance Treaty, they could still send hundreds or thousands of peak deity emperors. Fang Qingshan would have to avoid them. But the monk could run, but the temple could not. He could leave, but the Tao will sect and Pangu chaotic world would be in trouble. Although it was a man for himself, Fang Qingshan did not cultivate the heartless Tao. So, it would be a huge blow to his state of mind. So, he would always leave a way out. But it was different with In Sieho. After all, he was under orders to deal with Fang Qingshan. Moreover, Fang Qingshan had such great potential. Naturally, he had to eliminate the roots of the problem to prevent it from growing again when the spring breeze blows. He did not have any scruples. At that time, Fang Qingshan's death would be the end of everything. No one would remember him, and no one would avenge him. This was the difference between having a backer and not having one. As for the source will of the Great Path, the two-faced Dizun, and the everlasting lotus, the first two were not Fang Qingshan's backers. Even if they were, like the everlasting lotus, defeated and killed in a fight of the same level, they would definitely not lend a helping hand. Because this meant that Fang Qingshan had no potential at all. He didn't have that kind of luck. Even if they could save him for a while, would they have to be ready to save him at all times? They were not Fang Qingshan's nanny or protector. If this goes on, we won't be able to determine the victor even if we fight for 100 years. At a certain moment, Fang Qingshan and In Sieho stopped at the same time. In terms of experience, cultivation, divine abilities, cultivation techniques, and many other aspects, they were almost the same. Fighting back and forth, it was not something that could be decided in a short period of time. Most importantly, if he didn't use his trump card, he wouldn't be able to exhaust his opponent to death even if he wanted to. Although Fang Qingshan had the Origin Tower and the Lightning Gathering Tower, In Sieho wasn't weak either. His spiritual energy recovery speed was also very fast, and he wasn't afraid of a battle of attrition. If they continued to fight like this, even if they fought for thousands of years, the two of them would not have any problems and would still be full of vigor. It was as if they were meditating and they didn't feel tired or powerless at all. Therefore, In Sieho didn't want to drag this any longer. After all, he was representing ancestor Tian Xie to deal with Fang Qingshan. If he couldn't take down Fang Qingshan after a long time, it would be a loss of face for ancestor Tian Xie. Therefore, he said, "Why don't we use our real skills?" Sure, Fang Qingshan naturally had no reason to reject this. If he wanted to fight, then he would fight. Although he was a bit afraid of In Sieho's trump card, Fang Qingshan had even seen the forbidden technique of the two-faced Dizun before, so he wasn't afraid of him. If that's the case, then be careful. As soon as In Sieho finished speaking, his face turned serious. He tossed the long spear in his hand, and it floated in front of him. His hands danced and formed a series of hand seals while he muttered something. At that moment, the entire space shook. It was obvious that this technique wasn't something to be underestimated. Even with In Sieho's abilities, he couldn't use it so easily. He needed a certain amount of time to cast it. At the same time, the space shook. This meant that the heaven and earth had sensed that this technique wasn't simple. A storm is brewing. At that moment, a suffocating aura rose. The formless pressure was enough to make one go crazy and die. An extremely strong aura exploded, and the great Tao seemed to be trembling. Especially in the Pangu chaotic world where the two of them were fighting, the will of the Great Path felt endless fear. He knew that if In Sieho used this skill on him, the final result would be the destruction of the world, and he would die. At that moment, endless black and red clouds gathered. It was a sky full of evil chi. The black was scary and the red was devilish. It was so cold that it made people shiver. Evil chi dance and evil chi dance. The scene at that moment was somewhat similar to In Sieho's spear. However, the things that were displayed and the changes that were triggered had a qualitative change. If the drawing before was really just a drawing, then at this moment, the pagans seemed to have really come to life. There are yin and yang in the heaven and earth. When yin flourishes, yang declines. When Tao disappears, evil grows. Take my spear, evil Qi dance. At the next moment, eerie evil Qi rose and covered the entire sky. It swept out in all directions at lightning speed. Countless evil Qi seemed to have walked out of the river of time and space and shook the world. Slaughter, chaos, evil, and bloodthirst. The dense aura seemed to have reached its peak. Ghostly wails and wolf howls echoed in all directions. The evil Qi was devilish and murderous. At that moment, the world seemed to have no Tao, and the great Tao of the heaven and earth seemed to have retreated for the evil Qi. At that moment, the world seemed to have turned into the ancestral land of the heavenly evil clan. Even Pangu's chaotic world that wasn't in the center seemed to have been infected and was in danger. It seemed like it was going to be assimilated at the next moment. Facing such a situation, the best way to deal with it was naturally to interrupt it before it could be used. A wise man doesn't stand under a collapsing wall. Moreover, if Yin Xieho's secret technique was interrupted before it could be used, he would suffer from the backlash and be heavily injured. However, Fang Qingshan didn't do that. Firstly, he couldn't afford to lose face. After all, Yin Xieho said that they would use their trump cards to determine the winner. He agreed to it and naturally couldn't go back on his words. Although face wasn't worth much, it was important at times, especially when he was in a disadvantageous position. After all, if he was shameless, others could be shameless too. Secondly, although Yin Xieho's technique was powerful, Fang Qingshan wasn't afraid. Because this technique wasn't as powerful as the three venerables, three kowtows that the two-faced emperor used. Chapter 1724. That's right, the demonic horde dance was pretty good. It was obviously a top-notch secret technique of the heavenly evil clan. Coupled with the Yin Evil Marquis's peak rank 3 extreme Yin Evil Spear, his fighting prowess had reached the Emperor realm. He could even contend with some existences that had just broken through to the Emperor realm. However, it was still inferior to the 3 venerables, 3 kowtows performed by the two-faced Izun at the end. After all, it was a forbidden secret method. Even though two-faced Divine Emperor hadn't broken through to Venerable Sovereign at that time, and the secret method had just been created, a forbidden secret method was a forbidden secret method. As long as one crossed the threshold, he would be in a completely different world, just like the gap between a Divine Emperor and a Venerable Sovereign. Fang Qingshan could even resist a forbidden secret technique. Although it might be a little strenuous, he might have the help of others, and he might have already done his best. But in the end, he safely received the 3 kowtows of the 3 venerables. Otherwise, he would not have been able to obtain the title of the number 1 Divine Emperor. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to attract the attention of 2 venerable sovereigns and appear to help him when the heavenly evil great ancestor attacked. As such, Fang Qingshan naturally wouldn't be afraid of Yin Xieho's group of demons. With Fang Qingshan's means, even if he didn't summon the everlasting lotus, even if he didn't unite with the treasure, and even if he didn't perform the Sanqing unification, he still had other means. Moreover, even if Fang Qingshan wanted to eliminate the threat in its cradle, he might not be able to do so. This wasn't because Fang Qingshan was slow or anything else. But since there would be such a flaw when using this secret technique, wouldn't the Yin Xieho know about it? Since he knew, he still dared to use it in front of Fang Qingshan. Did he believe that Fang Qingshan was a true gentleman? That might not be the case, especially as the holy son of the heavenly evil clan. It was impossible for him to be that naive. He dared to be so unscrupulous in front of Fang Qingshan, as if he had no defense at all. He was not worried that Fang Qingshan would interrupt him, nor was he worried that he would be hurt by the secret technique if he was interrupted. There was only one reason, and that was that he had countermeasures. After all, one mustn't have the heart to harm others, but one mustn't be without the heart to guard against others. Furthermore, with the Yin Xieho's temperament and means, this might even be a trap waiting for Fang Qingshan to fall into it. How could someone like the Yin Xieho, who was born in the heavenly evil clan, be so simple? Of course, this was an overt plot. It all depended on whether Fang Qingshan would step in or not. Perhaps the other party was playing the empty fort strategy. Of course, the probability of this was too small. There was a high possibility that In Xie would take advantage of the situation if he stepped on it. If he didn't step on it, he could just continue using his secret technique. In any case, no matter what, he would not lose anything. Putting all these aside, even if the In Xie used the chaotic dance of evil, it wouldn't be easy for him to use it. He would need a certain amount of time to accumulate power, execute the hand seals, and coordinate with the sound seals. However, this amount of time wasn't long at all. In the eyes of others, it was just a split second. It was no different from using an ordinary attack. It was unpredictable and as fast as lightning, making it hard for others to react. However, Fang Qingshan's experience, combat strength, cultivation, and perception were similar to his. Therefore, the amount of time he had was greatly magnified. After all, their victory might be within a millionth of a second. Therefore, he felt that he had a chance of interrupting the In Xie's secret technique. Speaking of which, after the chaotic dance of the demons was executed, a sharp, extremely sinister spear intent burst forth. The spear thrust out as if it had received the support of all the demons. Its speed was unimaginably fast, and its strength was equally shocking and unparalleled. Most importantly, other than speed and strength, there was also the instantaneous, explosive power and the holy power of evil. Yes, the holy power of evil. This might seem like a contradictory statement, but it was the truth. As the saying goes, when Yin is extreme, Yang is born. Previously, because In Xie's heavenly evil force was restrained by Fang Qingshan's red lotus of fire, he had to learn from it. Therefore, when he used the heavenly evil force this time, it was refined to the extreme. Of course, this was also the additional effect of the secret technique. In Xie couldn't do it himself. But no matter what, if Fang Qingshan wanted to use the red lotus of fire to restrain the heavenly evil force, he would have to return empty-handed. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan had never thought of taking shortcuts, vast and boundless, spanning across the horizon. However, a muddy current formed by the convergence of spear will swept towards Fang Qingshan. Yes, it was a mudslide. However, it was quite different from an ordinary mudslide, because this mudslide was made up of blood, flesh, and bones. It was infused with the power of evil. Once it came into contact with it, it would be like maggots in one's bones. Even those who practiced Buddhism, Tao, and purification would not be able to get rid of it easily. Once one was infected, if one could not get rid of it quickly, one's strength would be restrained by 30%. And the more one was restrained, the more they would be restrained. This was the sinister and terrifying part of the heavenly evil clan. The river was rolling, and within it, there were countless demons dancing around. This mudslide seemed to be their carnival. When a mud reached Fang Qingshan's side, it did not directly collide with him. Instead, it turned into a swamp. Before Fang Qingshan could react, it appeared out of thin air in all directions around Fang Qingshan. In the sky, on the ground, and even in the boundless space and time, it surrounded and enveloped him. He was completely trapped in the mud. There was no way out. Even if he used the universal reincarnation chess, he might not be able to escape from it. In an instant, the suction force of the swamp, the restraining force, the corrosive force of the evil aura, and the killing force of the demons were all acting on Fang Qingshan's body. If it was an ordinary person, he would have been turned into meat paste in an instant. He would have been sliced into pieces and become one with the swamp. However, an ordinary person wouldn't need the In Xie to go through so much trouble. Putting all these aside, although the demonic dance wasn't comparable to the three venerables' three kowtows, it was still considered a top-notch secret technique of the heavenly evil clan. However, it was unknown if the In Xie wanted to finish the battle in one go, or if he knew that Fang Qingshan wasn't someone who was easy to deal with. Maybe it was because he didn't have much confidence in defeating Fang Qingshan with just one secret technique, or maybe there were other reasons. Anyway, after using the demonic dance, he didn't stop and continued to use his divine ability. Furthermore, the divine ability that he used right after wasn't any weaker than the demonic dance. In fact, he might even be able to defeat it. Ho's body shuddered. He formed a sword with both of his fingers and lightly touched the third eye between his eyebrows. The originally closed evil eye suddenly opened, and a vast black hole world could be seen in the eye. The black hole world looked strange and mysterious. It emitted boundless might. Chapter 17:25. Although the eye didn't unleash any attacks, a single glance was enough to make one sink into oblivion. It was boundless, just like the boundless void, and it was filled with loneliness. One's mind couldn't help but sink into it, unable to extricate themselves. Furthermore, judging from Ho's condition, the might of this divine eye wasn't to be underestimated. Although it was an innate ability, not even Ho could casually use it. Previously, when they fought in the Tower of Titles, he didn't use it. Perhaps at that time, Fang Qingshan wasn't worthy of his attention. After all, in the end, he was defeated by Fang Qingshan. Therefore, the most likely reason was that he couldn't use it at that time, or that the price he had to pay was too great. Guan Yu didn't open his eyes, but he wanted to kill. This divine eye was evidently the Ho's trump card. Since it was a trump card, it wouldn't be a simple matter. Many trump cards, like the one Demon Venerate Extermination had used earlier, required a huge price to use. Therefore, it couldn't be used easily. If it wasn't a deal with Fang Qingshan, the Ho wouldn't have opened his third eye. This eye wasn't simple. It was called the Divine Eye of Oblivion. Although this eye wasn't as famous as the Eye of Destruction, Creation, Space-Time, or Karma. But in terms of potential and power, it wasn't weak. In the Divine Eye, there was a world of evil, like the Sea of Desolation, the myriad worlds, the endless void, the heavenly evil clan, and the primordial demon sect. All sorts of evil spirits were born or gathered in it. The more evil, distracting thoughts and demons were gathered, the more terrifying the might of the Divine Eye of Oblivion would be. In the end, the Divine Eye of Oblivion could cause the entire myriad worlds and the endless void to sink into oblivion once the eye was opened. Just like those who cultivated the silent meditation, they mustn't open their mouths before achieving greater mastery. Otherwise, their cultivation would be broken and all their years of hard work would be gone in an instant. Although Ho wouldn't have to pay such a huge price, the god eye would still require a long time to nurture and nurture. Furthermore, just like Fang Qingshan's all-heaven chessboard, although it had great potential, it was not something that could be achieved in a short period of time. A god eye was a god eye. What level it could reach and what level it could reach depended entirely on one's own luck and cultivation. At least for now, Ho couldn't do it. Every time he opened his eyes, the whole world would sink. If that was the case, Fang Qingshan wouldn't even need to continue fighting. Even the three venerables, three kowtows of two faces would have to admit defeat in front of him. Even so, the might of this eye technique wasn't any weaker. In fact, it was even stronger than the chaotic dance of evil from before. After all, as mentioned earlier, there is no such thing as the most powerful divine ability, only the most suitable divine ability. As the Ho's innate ability, the Oblivion God, I was undoubtedly the most suitable technique for him. In his hands, he could unleash 100% of its power, or even more. Moreover, for Ho to be known as the top 3 strongest chosen in the history of the Heavenly Evil Clan, it was obvious that this god I played an important role. In the end, this divine ability was probably comparable to the legendary Eye of the Great Tao. It was a true supreme god eye. Wherever it went, it was as if the heavens and earth were annihilated. Eternal oblivion. Following Ho's shout, whoosh, the oblivion god, I emitted a dazzling divine light. Countless strange murmurs came from it, as if it was the whispers of demons. An unparalleled, devouring power erupted in an instant. What rock devouring? What black hole devouring? All of these paled in comparison. The dark light swept towards his Yuan Shun and true spirit like a bolt of lightning, yet unknowingly, without anyone noticing it. Imperceptibly, It wanted to attack the mind of the entire Naiwan palace, causing the Yuan Shun and true spirit to be shrouded in dust and lose their minds. Spiritual light, mind, memory, intelligence, will, and so on. All aspects would be unknowingly shrouded, causing them to forget where they were, who they were, and what they wanted to do. Of course, it would be fine if they just forgot. The key was that this thing was similar to the primordial chaos golden chalice. Once they forgot, it would be as if their cultivation had been shaved off. Once they forgot, it would completely disappear. This wasn't a seal, but a self-destruction. It wouldn't even give rise to any warnings. Even if they woke up in the end, it would be much more difficult to cultivate back. However, this was still the best situation, because once you sunk into oblivion, it wouldn't be easy to wake up again. Unless the Yin Xie let it go, or if you suddenly erupted, or if you had the help of an expert. Once you didn't wake up, you would be completely imprisoned in the God Eye, becoming a slave to the God Eye. If they wanted you to live, you would live, and if they wanted you to die, you would die. You would be like a lump of mud that everyone could need. You would forever sink into oblivion, dying, sinking, and annihilating again and again. This was similar to the illusion technique that Yin Xie used at the start of the battle. Of course, the power of this technique was incomparable. The God Eye of Oblivion was the ultimate version of the illusion technique. It didn't matter if the one at the start died, but the one at the end would be in utter misery. Not to mention the Yin Xie's continuous attacks. Fang Qingshan wasn't worried and didn't interrupt the Yin Xie, but he didn't underestimate it either. However, he didn't underestimate Inxia Marquis either. Even a lion would use its full strength to capture a rabbit. Not to mention, Inxia Marquis was an existence like him. Moreover, he couldn't just passively take a beating. Therefore, when Inxia Marquis attacked, he also used his own techniques. Eternal Divine Furnace. First level, 9 treasures return to 1. Fang Qingshan's movements weren't any slower than the Yin Xie's. He knew that if he was one step slower, he would always be behind. If the Yin Xie used his ultimate move first, he would be finished before he could finish. Thus, the moment the Yin Xie's chaotic dance of evil landed, Fang Qingshan also finished his secret technique. This time, Fang Qingshan didn't use the Samsara Tao-seeking fist. Although it was the culmination of his mystic arts, it still wasn't enough against these ultimate moves. Fortunately, apart from the Tao-seeking reincarnation fist, Fang Qingshan managed to come up with another set of secret arts before becoming one with the treasure, summoning the eternal green lotus, transforming into the 3 pure ones, and combining the 3 pure ones into one. That was to directly summon the eternal divine furnace. Of course, this wasn't directly summoning the eternal divine furnace, so there were differences. It was just an upgraded version of the Samsara Tao-seeking fist. It was similar to transforming into Sanxing and then Sanxing Return to One. Chapter 1726. Fang Qingshan's move was actually inspired by the fight between the 2 venerable sovereigns. From the fight between the 2 venerable sovereigns, Fang Qingshan felt the integration of Buddha, demon, and Emperor's Tao. These 3 kinds of power were all top-notch existences, and they were all very overbearing. It had a deep exclusivity. Although Buddhism said that one could become a Buddha immediately after laying down the butcher's knife, Emperor's Tao could also encompass the universe and the 4 seas. Demon's Tao could also become a demon with a thought and demonize the world. But this couldn't hide their supremacy. However, the 2 venerable sovereigns had perfectly fused them together. Moreover, they had also created a top-notch secret method of promotion, the 3 venerables, 3 kowtows. It was an eye-opener for Fang Qingshan. At the same time, it also inspired him. That was how he came up with this move. In fact, this secret method could also be considered as the reincarnation Tao-seeking fist. However, the previous reincarnation Tao-seeking fist usually summoned a treasure to support it. For example, the reincarnation Tao-seeking fist, Red Lotus of Hellfire, summoned only the Red Lotus of Hellfire. The reincarnation Tao-seeking fist, Shocking Thunder Flag summoned only the Shocking Thunder Flag. But this time, he used several moves at once, and just like Sanqing's unification, he fused these moves together. This was different from the Yin Ho using the Oblivion God, I right, after using the Chaotic Dance of Evil. It was also impossible to achieve the effect of 1 + 1 = 2. But when several moves were used, the power would definitely be far greater than summoning a treasure to support it. The so-called Eternal Divine Furnace. The first level, 9 Treasures Unification. As the name suggested, it was the first move to summon the Eternal Divine Furnace. The so-called 9 Treasures Unification was formed by the integration of the 9 unit weapons that appeared when the Timeless Arc broke through Ling Yun's Timeless Arc's Eternal Divine Furnace. As Fang Qingshan's voice fell, strange phenomena appeared in the void. There was the 9 Bins Yellow River Formation, 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 the 9 Bins Yellow River Formation. The first 9 treasures that were infused into the formation were the 9 Bins Yellow River Formation, the Zhodian Star Formation, the Death Scythe, the Passing Water Lamp, the Bridge of the Permethaw, the Shocking Thunder Flag, the Eternal Barracks, the Treasurefall Coin, and the Great Void Immortal Armor. Then, in the blink of an eye, these supreme treasures began to fuse together like birds returning to the forest. The Yellow River of 9 Bins Formation merged with the Zhoutian Star Formation. The Passing Water Lamp merged with the Permethaw Bridge. The Death Scythe merged with the Eternal Barracks. And the Coin of Treasurefall merged with the Shocking Thunder Flag and the Great Void Immortal Armor. After they fused together, they fused with each other until they became a seed. It was just like the Eternal Lotus Seed that Fang Qingshan had obtained in the past. It was crystal clear like jade and exuded an ancient Taoist rhyme, endless spirituality, and an eternal aura. The world decays, but I'm immortal. The sun and moon perish, but I'm not. I'm supreme, noble, and supreme. A layer of jade-green divine radiance bloomed like a tide. In the next moment, the seed sprouted and grew a lotus stem, 3 lotus leaves, and a jade-like green lotus that had yet to bloom. This was a little similar to the red lotus that Fang Qingshan had absorbed boundless karmic fire previously. However, it was a red lotus previously, and now was a green lotus. Moreover, in terms of foundation and nature, this green lotus was far superior to the red lotus. After all, this was the everlasting lotus that was formed from the eternal lotus seed. Moreover, the eternal divine furnace was the vessel of many supreme treasures. Putting all these aside, as the green lotus bloomed, it became more and more crystal clear. The lotus leaves were green, and the lotus stem was soft and tall. In the blink of an eye, all of this seemed to have happened a long time ago. However, from the time Fang Qingshan used the secret technique until now, it was only a matter of time. At least, although the Yin Xieho's chaotic dance of evil had already wrapped around Fang Qingshan, it only restricted his dodging and did not have the time to hurt him. At a certain moment, the lotus heart came out and formed a lotus seed that looked like a divine furnace. The tiny holes in the surroundings of the divine furnace were like the apertures of the human body, and there were countless markings of the Tao inscribed on them. They were dense and unfathomable, and at a cursory glance, they seemed like numerous lotus flowers. Of course, the most important thing was the hole that looked like 9 aligned stars. At this moment, it was inlaid with 9 supreme treasures. Upon closer inspection, weren't they the 9 supreme treasures that had appeared previously? With these 9 supreme treasures, the divine cauldron seemed to have a mind of its own, and the entire divine cauldron seemed to be perfect. Haha, good timing. Devour. Fang Qingshan let out a roar, and his purplish-golden chi and blood mixed with eternal god force instantly burst out of his body. He was like a golden sun, unyielding and supreme, blazing like a furnace fire. Under the contrast, he looked like an unparalleled god of war. In the next moment, the eternal divine furnace shone brightly, and a boundless, devouring power erupted. It was like a black hole that engulfed and devoured everything. The torrent of flesh and blood that had enveloped Fang Qingshan and the swamp of mud and flesh in all directions in the endless space-time were cleanly sucked over and swept into the divine furnace on the spot. No matter how many torrents of flesh and blood there were, it did not reject any of them. In front of the divine furnace, it was as if they had no power to resist and were forcibly swallowed. The 9 divine abilities turned into the furnace, and endless chi and blood, as well as eternal God force, were used as firewood to refine everything in the world. Not to mention the group of evils, even the group of devils, Buddhas, demons, and immortals were not rejected. Do you think you're the only one with eye techniques? It's impolite not to reciprocate. Take my last day's eye. After using the first level of the eternal divine furnace to deal with the group of evils, Fang Qingshan immediately used the reincarnation Tao-seeking fist. Last day's eye without hesitation. Whoosh! A simple and unadorned eye that seemed like a stone floated in midair. It wasn't exquisite, and it looked like the stone tools of the ancient human race. It didn't have any spirituality, and it gave off a deathly stillness like a boundless void. However, if one underestimated it because of this, then one would really be courting death. As soon as this object appeared, an unusual aura swept out like a tide. This aura wasn't like the evil marquee 3 eyes or the eye of the great Tao, which emitted a terrifying pressure. It made one involuntarily feel a sense of fear. When it descended upon one's body, it felt like one was carrying a chaotic world on one's back, and it was extremely burdensome. Even the bones in one's body emanated clear sounds of being on the verge of shattering, and one had the feeling of being forced to kneel on the ground. No. Even though the last day's eye's pressure was extremely formidable, it wasn't formidable to the point of causing others to fear it. All strength seemed to be so insignificant before this pressure. It wasn't like an ant facing an ocean. It was a form of despair. Chapter 17:27. Yes, this was a kind of despair. It wasn't the kind of despair where you're stronger than me and I can't beat you. In fact, even if the other party were to look up to him from afar, as long as his conviction wasn't lacking, he wouldn't despair. This despair was because he had lost all of his power, all of his techniques, divine abilities, secret techniques, cultivation, and even laws seemed to have lost their effects. He could only watch helplessly as he walked towards destruction. This was how formidable the eye of the last days was. That was why he was able to fight against a peak rank 3 with his mid-rank 3 rank. Now, with the advancement of the Timeless Arc, it had almost become the most powerful treasure in Fang Qingshan's possession besides the All-Heaven chessboard and the Timeless Arc, and it was even more powerful than Fang Qingshan's reincarnation mirror. Shua! In the next moment, the light from his eyes shot out, and in the next moment, wherever the light shone, all extraordinary powers were like snow meeting the spring sun, rapidly melting away and turning into nothingness. Whether it was divine abilities, spells, secret arts, laws, or even spirit chi, they were all strangely disintegrated into countless ordinary molecules and atoms, dissipating in the void, turned into nothingness. There wasn't even the slightest bit of resistance. This kind of melting was somewhat similar to the process of desolation, where chaotic spiritual energy was transformed into innate spiritual energy, and innate spiritual energy was transformed into acquired spiritual energy. However, it was more thorough, more domineering, and more impossible to change. The ultimate divine ability of the eye of the last days, the ultimate last days, under a ray of light, Fang Qingshan returned to his first era in a trance. At that time, he had not yet obtained the celestial chessboard, had not yet crossed the immortal world, let alone desolation, chaos, and even the infinite void. That was a place where immortals and Buddhas no longer existed, where the various heavens no longer existed, where the great Taos of heaven and earth did not appear, and where divine abilities could not be used. Daos were powerless, and all forms of power would return to nothingness. That was a place where there was no transcendence. That place was completely enveloped by the endless Dharma ending. It was the end of transcendence. It was the Dharma ending era. At this moment, Yin Xieho deeply experienced the power of the ultimate doomsday technique. This numinous treasure and this divine power were truly terrifying. If the last days I could advance to the peak of the 4th level, then it wouldn't have to be at the level of the heavenly evil clan's ancestral artifact or the infinite Buddha's 10,000 Buddhas pilgrimage painting. So long as it advanced to the 4th level, then the Last Days Eye's ultimate Last Days technique would be comparable to the Two-Faced Emperor's 3 Venerables 3 Kowtows, a forbidden technique. At this moment, even though he had yet to reach that level, his might was not to be underestimated. Just a glance was enough to make Yin Xieho suffer. His fallen god, I was indeed a top-notch eye technique. The god I was not one bit inferior to the eyes of karma, fate, and samsara. Unfortunately, the Eye of the Last Days was the counter to all extraordinary energy, and it was just like how the treasure fall coin was to all spirit treasures and weapons. The ultimate Last Days technique of the Eye of the Last Days naturally countered all divine abilities that possess spirit. For a time, the light of oblivion collided with the light of Last Days. Not to say that the light of oblivion didn't possess the slightest ability to resist, but was indeed slightly unable to withstand a single blow. It was utterly defeated, and it retreated repeatedly before gradually vanishing into nothingness. It was truly an incomparably domineering and unparalleled divine ability. It wasn't just the light of oblivion. Even Yin Xieho's fallen god, I seemed to have been greatly affected. Yin Xieho's fallen god, I hadn't attained the advanced stage in the first place, so it couldn't be utilized rashly. This time, it was because his old rival, Fong Qingshan, wanted to fight for the title of the #1 God Emperor, and coupled with the ancestors' request, it was for the sake of the heavenly evil clan's reputation. So, he disregarded the consumption and damage he suffered and directly activated his God Eye. However, he never imagined that Fong Qingshan's Eye of the Last Days would actually be so domineering. The Annihilation Oblivion God Light was one thing, but it even affected the Oblivion God Eye. This was truly incredible. Damn it, exactly what sort of spirit treasure is this? What sort of divine ability is this? It's actually so formidable. Yin Xieho was the first to see Fong Qingshan utilize the eternal divine furnace and devour the dance of evil divine ability without the slightest hesitation. This had already caused him to be extremely shocked. However, he never imagined that something even more shocking was about to happen. The Eye of the Last Days was so domineering that it had completely exceeded his imagination. He'd never seen such a strange divine ability before, let alone the Oblivion God Eye. Even the chaotic dance of the evil horde and the extreme evil spear had affected his magic power, true spirit, Yuan's soul, and laws. The #1 God Emperor really lives up to his reputation. Yin Xieho wiped his God Eye of oblivion and closed it with a pained expression. He snorted coldly with a livid expression, and then his eyes turned cold as he spoke in a cold voice. However, I'm not someone to be trifled with. I don't believe that your furnace and I are truly invulnerable. Evil divine sacrifice. Explode. Explode. Rumble. Yin Xieho went all out and controlled the evil divine to explode on the spot. Because if he didn't do that, all the evil divine beings would be like mortals under the Eye of the Last Days. Even if they fell into the eternal divine furnace, they would still be suppressed and refined on the spot. Therefore, it was better to take advantage of this situation and fight to the death. Perhaps there was a way out. The dance of evil divine ability summoned all sorts of evils, and every single one of them wasn't inferior to an ordinary God Emperor. It was obvious how destructive the explosion would be if they exploded together. For a time, the sound of a bell rang out one after another. The eternal divine furnace seemed to be a little overwhelmed by this violent self-destruction. Wham! 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 The eternal divine furnace that stood towering in space and devoured everything in its surroundings couldn't help but shake at this moment. Light flowed on the furnace, and numerous green lotuses bloomed on it. They ceaselessly resisted the destructive force of the explosion while maintaining the eternal divine furnace and increasing its devouring power. It wasn't just the eternal divine furnace. Even the Eye of the Last Days was affected. Even though the Eye of the Last Days was formidable and the ultimate Last Days was powerful, it wasn't invincible. It was just like the treasure fall coin. Even though it was powerful, it wasn't as effective against the ultimate evil spear that Sieho had tossed out. In the end, restraint was only a relative state. It was just like water and fire. Water could extinguish fire, and fire could evaporate water. It was the same at this moment. Under Sieho's self-destruction of the dance of evil divine ability, the Eye of the Last Days was naturally torn apart mercilessly. Moreover, the force even passed through the two divine abilities of Fang Qingshan and continued charging towards him. Decisive. What good Sieho? Fang Qingshan didn't panic. He formed a seal with both hands and softly said, "Come." As soon as he finished speaking, the eternal divine furnace suddenly shook and instantly became unbreakable. A devouring power that was more than 10 times more violent swept out in all directions. This was naturally because Fang Qingshan had summoned the real, eternal divine furnace. Chapter 1728. As the timeless arc, the main body, the eternal divine furnace, the eternal lightning pool, and the lightning gathering tower were the four most important parts. Without the eternal lightning pool, there would be no driving force. Without the lightning gathering tower, there would be no roots. As for the eternal divine furnace, it naturally represented the supreme combat power of the timeless Arkansas. Of course, this did not mean that the other parts, such as the sails, deck, market, tower, mast, and so on, were not important. After all, the timeless arc would not be complete without any one of them. However, compared to the main body of the timeless arc, the eternal divine furnace, the eternal lightning pool, and the lightning gathering tower, they were slightly less important. Speaking of which, it was precisely because the eternal divine furnace was the most important part of the timeless arc, especially the eternal divine furnace, the eternal lightning pool, and the lightning gathering tower, which are the three core units of the eternal lotus seed. Therefore, the power of these three units was naturally incomparable. Putting the others aside, if Fang Qingshan used the reincarnation Tao Seeking Fist, the power of summoning the thunderclap flag and the eternal lightning pool was incomparable. The latter's power was far superior to the former. At this moment, the power of the eternal divine furnace that he had summoned had an immediate effect. Crack! With Sieho's decisive decision, the terrifying power brought about by the self-destruction of the evil group caused cracks to appear on the eternal divine furnace. Every single one of these cracks looked abnormally hideous and terrifying. The destructive power came wave after wave, and each wave had a destructive power that surpassed that of an ordinary god emperor. After all, Sieho's move was not an ordinary move. It was also augmented by the power of the evil group. These evils were imprints hidden between heaven and earth. They were similar to the imprints that Pang Bo used to summon the Fist Emperor in the River of Time and Space. The only difference was that the Fist Emperor's imprint was far superior to these evil imprints. Moreover, it was impossible to summon the Fist Emperor without a certain method. Sieho's summoning of these evil imprints was equivalent to recruiting soldiers. That aside, the eternal divine furnace's 9 treasures returned to 1 was also starting to show signs of exhaustion. After devouring an enormous amount of destructive power, it was finally unable to completely neutralize all of the attacks and began to crumble. Along with the evil group, it was destroyed, turned into nothingness. Now that the true eternal divine furnace had appeared, even though it wasn't the eternal heavenly vessel, the effects were greatly alleviated. At the very least, It was impossible for the self-detonation of the group of evil to pass through the eternal divine furnace and the eye of the last days to sweep towards Fang Qingshan without losing momentum. Of course, one step behind was always behind. This time, Fang Qingshan was caught unprepared by the Yin Xiaoho. Although he had summoned the eternal divine furnace in time, he had lost the initiative and could only defend passively. Although he was divine he had paid the price for the timeless Dragon King, and Dragon. In short, it was a lose-lose situation. Killing 1,000 of the enemy would result in 800 casualties. However, if Fang Qingshan was allowed to fully erupt with the might of the eternal divine furnace and Last Day's Eye, then even if Yin Xiaoho possessed other trump cards, he would probably suffer the same fate as Fang Qingshan and lose the initiative to utilize them. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Yin Xiaoho still had the upper hand. This was also the reason why he had rich combat experience. Damn Yin Xiaoho. Compared to them, I'm still lacking. Seeing that the eternal divine furnace had stabilized the situation, Fang Qingshan couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. This time, although he had suffered a small loss, he did not take it to heart. However, his heart was in awe. Coincidentally, the Yin Xiaoho also felt the same way. Although the eternal divine furnace seemed to be more powerful, he was still fearful of the strangeness of the Eye of Age. With a single glance, all divine abilities and laws collapsed. It was as if all extraordinary powers would disappear and lose their strength under the Eye of Age. Even the strength of one's physical body would be affected. In the past, others had always been afraid of their heavenly diabolical power, but they had never expected to be pecked in the eye by the goose. First, Fang Qingshan used the red lotus of fire to burn the heavenly diabolical power, and now he was shocked by the Eye of Age. Although he knew that a scholar who had been away for 3 days should be looked at in a new light, although he knew that the number 1 divine emperor should be worthy of his reputation. After all, he had taken over from the hands of 2 divine emperors. However, it was better to meet him in person than to know him by reputation. When they really faced him, they were still shocked by Fang Qingshan's means. However, both of them were strong-willed people. Although they were shocked by each other's means, they weren't afraid. The heavenly diabolism exists as long as the heavenly diabolism exists. As long as the 7 emotions and 6 desires exist, as long as there are ghosts and monsters, as long as there is yin and yang, as long as there is black and white, so what if it's the Dharma ending era? Even if it's the so-called pure land of bliss of the Buddhist sect or the so-called peaceful land of Taoism, there will still be a place for me, the heavenly diabolism. Your Dharma ending era is your Dharma ending era. He had used the chaotic dance of evil and the divine eye of oblivion. Yet, he still couldn't do anything to Fang Qingshan. Yin Xiaoho was helpless. If he was only representing himself, Yin Xiaoho would definitely give up, just like that day in the Tower of Tidal. Unfortunately, this time, he wasn't just representing himself. He was representing the entire heavenly diabolical race and its ancestor. Therefore, he wouldn't give up until the very last moment. Therefore, Yin Xiaoho could only use his last move. Fight! Take my invincible divine spear. Yin Xiaoho let out a battle cry. Without any hesitation, he raised his hand and threw out the extreme Yin evilness spear. Of course, this time, he wasn't trying to beat Yi Futian at his own game. The same move could only be used against someone of the same level. The reason why he threw the extreme Yin evil spear was because he summoned the true form of the treasure, the ancestral weapon of the heavenly diabolical race. Buzz. The moment Yin Xiaoho summoned it, beyond the boundless space and time, in the heavenly diabolical race's territory, the heavenly diabolical altar suddenly shone brightly. The ancestral weapon that was placed on it started to tremble. Everyone from the heavenly diabolical race was shocked. After all, someone was spying on the heavenly diabolical race, which caused the ancestor of the heavenly diabolical race to take action. Now, the heavenly diabolical altar and the ancestral weapon shone brightly. If they weren't confident in the strength of the heavenly diabolical race, everyone from the heavenly diabolical race would think that the heavenly diabolical race was in danger. Of course, this was only for the ordinary members of the heavenly diabolical race, or any other race below the venerable emperors. The venerable emperors of the heavenly diabolical race didn't pay much attention to it at first. Now, they were all looking at the place where Yin Xieho and Fang Qingshan were fighting. Chapter 1729. There were too many things that surprised the heavenly evil clan's emperors today. First of all, there was still someone who dared to spy on their ancestors' land for so many years. Moreover, it was the altar that attracted the old ancestor's attention. Then, even the old ancestor, who had always been successful, couldn't do anything to the intruder. Instead, the origin will of the Great Way and two emperors appeared. Under their pressure, the old ancestor had no choice but to send Yin Xieho to save face. As for the everlasting lotus, even Fang Qingshan, two emperors, and the origin will of the Great Way didn't notice it, let alone them. Speaking of which, as one of the most valiant holy sons in the history of the heavenly evil clan, the Yin Xieho's strength was well known, and he had fought his way through. Originally, they thought that with him taking action, they should be able to succeed immediately. Unfortunately, he hadn't succeeded after such a long time. But now, he summoned the ancestral artifact spear. Should they say that Fang Qingshan lived up to his reputation as the #1 divine emperor? One had to know that even though the Yin Xieho was only using his identity and the extreme Yin's demonic spear in his hand to summon a portion of the power of an ancestral artifact, it wasn't a small matter. After all, the ancestral artifact of the heavenly evil clan couldn't be used unless the heavenly evil clan was in a critical situation. In the past, every time it was used, it was to control the heavenly evil clan or even the general trend of the heavens and realms. And it was used to deal with peak emperors who ranked top 20 on the Supreme Forces list. But this time, it was used to deal with Fang Qingshan, who hadn't even become an emperor. How could they not be surprised? They weren't the only ones who were surprised. At this moment, almost all the emperors in the heavens and realms were shocked. They were familiar with the aura of the heavenly evil clan's ancestral artifact. At this moment, the weaker emperors, or those who were below peak emperors, felt as if there was a thorn in their backs and a fishbone stuck in their throats. It could be seen how amazing the power of Yin Xieho's spear was. How many years has it been? I never thought that I would see the heavenly evil clan's ancestral artifact spear before the tribulation begins. That's right, the heavenly evil saint's son, the #1 divine emperor. This era is indeed extraordinary. Who knows, this time, there might really be someone who transcends the myriad worlds. Transcendence, what a distant and despairing term. Who do you think will win in the end? That's hard to say. Logically speaking, the Yin Evil Marquis has even used the ancestral artifact of the heavenly evil clan, and his victory is practically set in stone. However, Fang Qingshan's reputation as the #1 divine emperor isn't undeserved. Yeah, I remember last time he won the title of the first divine emperor in the forbidden secret method of 3 venerables and 3 kowtows of 2-faced venerables. Forget it, let's just wait and see. Their fight had attracted the attention of all the venerable sovereigns in all the realms. It had shocked them and caused them to discuss it. Fang Qingshan did not know about it. Even if he knew, he would not care at all. After all, even the venerables, who weren't being targeted, felt uneasy. As the first to bear the brunt, one could imagine how Fang Qingshan felt. He didn't have any other thoughts in his mind. Enhance. Enhance all of them. At this moment, Fang Qingshan felt extremely threatened. He knew that this was the last moment. There was no time to think, so he used all of his techniques. Because he knew that if he didn't use them now, he wouldn't be able to use them in the future. After all, to him, losing was equivalent to dying. Therefore, the samsara mirror first integrated into his body to strengthen his physique. Then, the heaven chessboard and the timeless arc combined into one. Then, they combined with Fang Qingshan and the treasure. One Qi turned into Sanqing, and Sanqing became one. Amplification rule, 10 times amplification. In the blink of an eye, from Yin Xie Ho summoning the ancestral artifact of the heavenly diabolism, to the attention of all, to Fang Qingshan using all of his techniques. All of this seemed to have happened for a long time, but in reality, only a fraction of a second had passed. Fang Qingshan used all of his trump cards to increase his combat ability to the maximum. Then he used the technique he used to deal with the two-faced Izun and 3 Kowdows. Eternal Lamp of the Mind. Facing Yin Xieho's extremely overbearing spear that pierced through the void with unparalleled willpower, Fang Qingshan finally used his final technique. Following his shout, an eternal sense of tranquility blossomed in the midst of this murderous aura. This was supposed to be a battlefield, but at this moment, it felt like a Buddhist and Taoist holy land. Light, infinite light. It wasn't dazzling, but it was magnificent. The lamp wasn't huge, but it was very mysterious. A bright lamp hung high, and the boundless eternal Tao aura lingered on it. In a trance, one would think that it was the everlasting lotus that had descended to the heavens. With the great Tao green lotus diagram as the foundation, the lotus lamp was molded, the eternal lotus seed was the wick, the eternal divine essence was the lamp oil, and the heart was the lamp fire. When this lamp was lit, all inner and outer demons would be suppressed. Although this was not the first time Fang Qingshan had used this secret technique, every time he used it, it was different from the past. Especially this time, it was unknown if it sensed the danger that Fang Qingshan was in, or if his luck had reached the level of heaven and earth, or if there were other reasons. Subconsciously, Fang Qingshan felt a feeling similar to the timeless ark's advancement, the eternal blessing, and the eternal God lotus attention. The everlasting lotus's blessing. Although it wasn't much compared to the vastness and majesty of the everlasting lotus, it was enough. Yes, it was indeed enough. If Yin Xieho's summoning of the heavenly evil ancestral artifact was enough to shock all the sovereigns in the heavens. Now that they saw Fang Qingshan using the eternal heart lamp technique, it was even more difficult for them to control themselves. After all, the everlasting lotus represented the only existence that surpassed the sovereigns. In the past, they could only feel the everlasting lotus's existence when the timeless arc was advancing. But now, Fang Qingshan had used a secret technique to summon the everlasting lotus's blessing. How could they not be shocked? If it weren't for the heavenly evil ancestor, the two-faced sovereigns, the great path source will, and even the everlasting lotus's favor, at this moment, they were probably already restless. They tore open the space and came to the place where Fang Qingshan and Yin Xieho were fighting. Then, they captured Fang Qingshan and forced him to use the secret technique. However, they still retained the last trace of reason. Not to mention the two-faced sovereigns and the great paths will. Just the fact that Fang Qingshan could get the everlasting lotus's favor was not something they could easily touch. After all, in the past, those who wanted to advance because of the timeless arc deprive the timeless arc or follow the eternal blessing back to Hongmeng did not have a good ending. Chapter 1730. Since the creation of the heavenly planes, no one had ever broken through to the overlord level. Not to mention the old monsters that had existed since the creation of the heavenly planes, even those who came later, like the Xingyi Great Emperor, wanted to break through. No, they wanted to. They wanted to. If they could attain the Tao in the morning, they could die without regrets. As long as they could attain the Tao, they could disregard life and death. On the other hand, if the Tao was severed, one could imagine what it would feel like. In order to break through, these people did everything they could and thought of every method they could think of. The eternal green lotus was known throughout the universe as an existence that had completely surpassed the emperor level. Naturally, there would be people who had designs on it. Some wanted to take away the timeless arc. Some wanted to follow the eternal blessing and go against the river of time and space to trace back to the primordial origin. Some even wanted to use their own heart blood to nurture the eternal lotus seed and use it to take the form of the timeless Arkansas. Some in any case, they would do anything they could think of. There was nothing they couldn't do. But the final result was naturally bitter tears. The bloody lesson was like a bucket of cold water splashed on their fiery hearts. Therefore, even though they discovered that Fang Qingshan was unusual, no one dared to act rashly. Even if they wanted to, even without the deterrence of the everlasting lotus, it wouldn't be an easy task. Not many people dared to take the risk. After all, as the master of the timeless arc, Fang Qingshan had people behind him. Although these people weren't related to him, as the master of the timeless arc, they were natural allies. Targeting Fang Qingshan was one thing, but when it came to the timeless arc, the everlasting lotus, they would become enemies with all the masters of the timeless Arkansas. They had a common enemy. If they could make a move against Fang Qingshan today, would they do the same to them in the future? The fox grieves for the rabbit's death. In fact, the last eternal emperor was a member of the timeless Arkansas. Apart from the timeless arc's lineage, there weren't many in the all heavens who dared to use the name eternal. Putting all these aside, when the Yin Xiaoho saw Fang Qingshan's final eruption, his pupils instantly contracted. Once the eternal heart lamp was unleashed, even though it looked like a divine ability, it instantly condensed into a substance. It was no different from a supreme treasure, emitting a simple yet eternal aura. This was especially true for the eternal aura that emanated from the wick. It was supreme, like a prison, like a mountain, like the sea. It seemed peaceful and at ease, but at the same time, it was incomparably domineering. Compared to the ancestral artifact of the heavenly evil clan that he had summoned, or even the altar of the heavenly evil clan, all the supreme treasures and experts that he had seen in his life paled in comparison to this aura. Even though there was only one, and it was borrowed, it was enough to stun the Yin Xiaoho. Although the eternal heart lamp was not an offensive technique, or rather, with Fang Qingshan's cultivation level, he could not control the eternal energy to attack. But as the light shone, it was as clear as water, and it shook the millions of voids. Especially the eternal will contained within, which was like the source of the great path will. With a domineering aura that could burn anything, it instantly swept towards the Yin Xiaoho. Humph! I don't believe that I can't take you down. The Yin Xiaoho was furious. He did not expect that not only would he not be able to defeat Fang Qingshan after summoning the ancestral artifact, but he had also fallen into a disadvantageous position. He almost choked to death from anger. As for why he did not use the ancestral artifact directly, but summoned it instead. Firstly, using a peak level 4 supreme treasure was akin to bullying the weak and breaking the rules. The two emperors and the great path wills would not allow it. Secondly, even though he was a saint and had received orders from the heavenly evil old ancestor, the ancestral artifact was too important to the heavenly evil clan. He could not use it unless it was a matter of life and death. Moreover, even if he had the authority, he did not have the ability to do so. After all, the Yin Xiaoho had not reached the Emperor realm yet. It would be fine if he used an ordinary level 4 supreme treasure. But if he used a peak level 4 supreme treasure, especially the heavenly evil ancestral artifact, he would be sucked dry before he could even attack Fang Qingshan. However, even though he could not use the ancestral artifact itself, he could still summon the heavenly evil altar to boost his cultivation. Come, break! Looking at Fang Qingshan's rising aura, the Yin Xiaoho naturally did not want to be outdone. He summoned the heavenly evil altar again. Then, an exquisite altar appeared behind Yin Xiaoho's head. It wasn't very tall, but it was about 3 feet tall and occupied an area with a circumference of 9 feet. What else could it be if not the heavenly evil altar? Its surface was engraved with a large number of mysterious patterns. They were intertwined and looked extremely mysterious. The pitch-black runes flickered with a demonic, evil light. It was ancient and mysterious. It stood in the void as if it was connected with the entire void. It was inseparable and hard to separate. It was as if the void had to be destroyed in order to break the altar. Whoosh! The Yin Xiaoho bowed respectfully towards the altar and made a pious, sacrificial chant. The next moment, a pitch-black divine light appeared on the altar and enveloped the Yin Xiaoho's entire body. Boom! almost on the spot, just like how Fang Qingshan fused with the artifact and Sanqing fused with it. A powerful aura burst out from the Yin Xiao's body. It was obvious that the Yin Xiao's cultivation had a qualitative breakthrough after being strengthened by the heavenly evil altar. A slight change would affect the entire body. Following the breakthrough of the Yin Xiao's cultivation, the power of the heavenly evil ancestral artifact that he could summon was obviously stronger. Whoosh! However, the extreme Yin evil spear flashed, and the spear will tore through the sky. With endless darkness and endless evilness, it stabbed towards Fang Qingshan without any hesitation. The next moment, wherever the tip of the spear passed, the void turned into a devilish and evil color. The viscous evil energy seemed to have solidified. In just a few breaths' time, the void within a radius of a few 100,000 miles had been transformed into evil soil. If it were to land on one's body, the consequences would be unimaginable. One would probably explode on the spot. The power and speed were too shocking. The attack and defense were completely different. At this moment, Fang Qingshan, who had the upper hand just a moment ago, was suppressed by the Yin Xiao's attack. The eternal heart lamp was compressed around Fang Qingshan's body. A bright lamp was hanging high in the sky. Under the endless light, a peerless lotus of 81 grades was faintly discernible. It had completely protected Fang Qingshan within it. However, it did not completely isolate the calamity and misfortune outside. It displayed the might of being untouchable and invincible. On the contrary, under the Yin Xiao's attack, the lamp was extinguished and the lotus was faintly discernible. Everything seemed so illusory. It was as if the lotus would wither and the lamp would be extinguished at the next moment. The situation seemed to have become dangerous once again. Chapter 1731. He really doesn't want to give up. Yin Xiao summoned the heavenly evil ancestral artifact, and now he summoned the heavenly evil altar. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't use these two treasures, he might have used his main body to attack Lin Fan. Killing intent flashed in Fang Qingshan's eyes. Wasn't it just spying on the heavenly evil ancestor land? Forget about the heavenly evil ancestor bullying the weak to deal with him. The Yin Xiao had provoked his bottom line time and time again. Did he really think that he was so easy to bully and that he wouldn't dare to kill him? To Fang Qingshan, he had always been courageous and diligent. He had a heart of treading on thin ice, and he wouldn't fight for a moment. As long as there's life, there's hope. But now, Yin Xiao had forced him into a hopeless situation. If he didn't explode, Yin Xiao would have the upper hand. After he won, he would definitely kill Lin Fan to protect Heavenly Evil's face and scare everyone. If he exploded, it wouldn't be a good ending for Fang Qingshan either. If he was like the last time in the Tidal Tower, he would burn his extreme flame and explode with all his might just for the last bit of ascension. The Eternal Heart Lamp could become stronger. It could be twice, 10 times, or even more than 100 times. But such a thing could only happen once. There was only one chance. If he used it, he would lose his life. So, other than a life and death struggle, he wouldn't be able to use it. If he used it, Fang Qingshan didn't know what would happen to Yin Xiao, but he knew that he would definitely die. So, whether he exploded or not, it seemed to be a dead end for Fang Qingshan. Luckily, he still had a trump card. I didn't want to use it so soon, but it's a pity that plans can't keep up with the changes. Fang Qingshan looked at his dantian. Inside his Naiwan palace, he saw that in the deepest part of his dantian, there was a pagoda suppressing heaven and earth. There were many layers, and they had distinct edges and corners. Starlight shone on it, as if there were countless brilliant stars twinkling on it. Each star emanated a completely different kind of charm of the Great Path. This pagoda was naturally the sealing pagoda that Fang Qingshan had created using the Zhoutian star formation diagram as a foundation. What was sealed inside the pagoda was naturally the Xingyi monarch's origin energy and true soul energy. His original plan was to wait until his state of mind, magic power, primordial spirit, will, and cultivation were further stabilized before he undid the seal step by step. However, He didn't expect that even though his thoughts were beautiful, reality didn't allow him to follow the prescribed order. Fortunately, even though unsealing it now would be a huge disadvantage for Fang Qingshan, it was still a good thing. However, it was not impossible to make up for it. Compared to the future, the matter at hand was naturally more important. If he didn't solve the current problem, he wouldn't be able to think about the future. I want to see who will have a last laugh. Fang Qingshan sneered. He formed a seal with both hands and made a soft sound. Open. Because the seal in Fang Qingshan's body was sealed by himself, it wasn't difficult to unseal it. As soon as he finished speaking, the shining stars on the ceiling pagoda seemed to have reached the end of their lives. One by one, they instantly dimmed. Stars extinguished. In the next moment, the pagoda was completely broken and destroyed. As the seal was broken, the power that belonged to the Xingyi monarch's origin energy naturally gushed out like a flood. Rumble. Rumbling sounds could be heard from within Fang Qingshan's body. He could see countless rays of divine light flowing around him. They spread out uncontrollably. Between the heavens and the earth, an endless amount of Emperor's aura swept out in all directions like a tidal wave. Naturally, Fang Qingshan's body started to expand involuntarily. Cracks of various sizes appeared on his body. Evidently, even with his body's capacity to bear so much power, his body couldn't bear the burden. However, at this moment, Fang Qingshan couldn't care less. Moreover, this situation was already within his expectations. This time, he had suffered a great loss. The fusion of the Xingyi monarch's origin energy was obviously a great damage to his foundation. Moreover, the fusion at this moment could not be maximized. The loss was great. Moreover, if the Xingyi Heavenly Emperor hadn't helped him condense the reincarnation mirror in advance, his body would have collapsed even with the reincarnation mirror to share the pressure. After suffering so much, if he didn't teach the Yin Xieho a lesson, he would really be letting himself down. As for why he didn't kill the Yin Xieho, Fang Qingshan wanted to kill him, but he was powerless to do so. The Yin Xieho wasn't alone. He was like the two-faced Izun back then. Behind him was the Heavenly Evil Clan, the old ancestor of the Heavenly Evil Clan. As one of the strongest saints in the Heavenly Evil Clan, the old ancestor of the Heavenly Evil Clan would definitely not sit back and watch him die in his hands. However, even if he couldn't kill him, he could still defeat him, attack him, and steal his luck. Fang Qingshan's eyes were red. He took a deep breath and activated the Eternal Heart Lamp to its maximum power. Wong. The light was so bright that people couldn't open their eyes. In the lamplight, a lofty green lotus bloomed vaguely, as well as all kinds of lotuses that were more than 36 grades around it. Streams of purple gas that gathered into clouds seemed to have become more solid. Rumble. The light surged and clashed with the extreme Yin Evil Spear. First, there was extreme silence. It was as if time and space had stopped. Great sounds lack sound, great elephants lack shape. But after a short while, an unprecedented shockwave erupted. The most important thing was that the Yin Xieho lost. That's right. With the support of the Xingyi monarch's origin energy, Fang Qingshan's power had once again surpassed the Yin Xieho. The east wind suppressed the west wind. The Yin Xieho was in danger now. The old power was gone, but the new power was not born yet. He used all his strength to summon the ancestral artifact and the heavenly evil sacrificial altar. Even with the recovery speed of his spiritual power, he could only keep himself from collapsing. Moreover, when he clashed with the Eternal Heart Lamp, he failed on the verge of success. His secret technique was broken and he was naturally implicated. Therefore, at this moment, the Yin Xieho could only watch as the shockwave from the collision of the two forbidden secret techniques swept towards him. However, he wasn't worried. He only stared at Fang Qingshan. It was as if he was mumbling to himself, but also as if he was making an oath. This is the second time. I believe there won't be a third time. Then, it confirmed Fang Qingshan's guess. Rumble. Suddenly, the space that Fang Qingshan and the others were standing on started shaking. It was as if a natural disaster was descending. Huge cracks that were 100 miles long appeared. They intersected with each other and stretched across the boundless space. The entire space was like a cracked porcelain that was about to collapse at any moment. Chapter 1732. A familiar and majestic aura once again descended upon the void. At the same time, Fang Qingshan and Marquis Xie felt two more gazes following closely behind. However, the two gazes seemed to be on guard and did not attack. Needless to say, these three forces naturally represented ancestor Tian Xie, the two-faced emperor, and the origin will of the Great Path. The former, needless to say, was to rescue Marquis Xie. After all, Marquis Xie was the holy son of the heavenly evil tribe, the future of the heavenly evil tribe. Moreover, he was here on ancestor Tian Xie's orders. Naturally, he would not let him die here. Although he did not have ancestor Tian Xie's orders, he would still come because of the demon venerable extermination summons. As for the latter two, they were naturally guarding against ancestor Tian Xie, afraid that he would do something desperate and attack Fang Qingshan, although it seemed to have been agreed that those above the emperor level would not attack. However, the two-faced Emperor Tian Xie did not trust ancestor Tian Xie or of the heavenly evil tribe's credibility. After all, even if he really attacked and killed Fang Qingshan, could he really fight to the death with the heavenly evil tribe and let Marquis Xie be buried with Fang Qingshan? Whoosh! The sound of a surging river could be heard. The void cracked open, revealing a hazy long river of unknown color. The long river gurgled, its origin unknown, its end unknown, but it seemed to be taking away all the vicissitudes of time. Suddenly, a pitch-black hand that was even deeper than the boundless void stretched out from the river of space-time. It blotted out the sun and blotted out the sky. It seemed to have covered the entire expanse of space. As soon as the hand fell, Fang Qingshan's pupils constricted, and he felt an unprecedented fear. Just like when ancestor Tian Xie attacked him, he could not move and could only watch the hand fall. Heaven and earth seemed to have become shackles. Fortunately, perhaps it was because the two-faced emperor and the origin will of the Great Path were watching, or because ancestor Tian Xie also wanted to save face, or perhaps it was because of other reasons. He had not attacked Fang Qingshan. The hand just reached out and grabbed Marquis Xie and disappeared in a flash. Phew! At this time, Fang Qingshan finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, in the face of the surging shockwaves, he still felt a headache coming on. Although he was slightly better off than Marquis Xie, as only a third of the aftershock was directed at him, he did not suffer any backlash from the sacred art. However, at this moment, even if he wasn't completely exhausted, he wasn't in a much better state. To him, facing the impact of the aftermath was still a hurdle that he could not cross. If he was not careful, he might not have fallen in the battle with the Eveline Marquis, but instead died from the aftermath of the battle. If news of this spread out, he would become a laughingstock. Freeze! Just as thousands of thoughts flashed through Fang Qingshan's mind as he thought about what to do, a voice rang out from above the boundless void. He helped him solve the problem. In the next moment, Fang Qingshan and the Marquis demonized two moves that had almost reached the level of a forbidden secret technique collided. The shockwaves that surged in all directions instantly seemed to be frozen in midair. Disperse. Then, there was another sound, and the aftermath seemed to have been corroded. It melted into a puff of green smoke and disappeared. The one who made the move was naturally the two-faced emperor. Almost at the same moment when ancestor Tian Xie made his move, the two-faced emperor also made his move. He was originally guarding against ancestor Tian Xie making a move against Fang Qingshan, but he did not expect ancestor Tian Xie to be so righteous this time and did not play any tricks. However, since ancestor Tian Xie had made a move to save the evil Marquis, this was somewhat against the rules. However, rules were dead, and people were alive, and rules were also set by people. As long as it was not too overboard, people would usually turn a blind eye to it. However, since he had made a move to save the evil Embark. The two-faced emperor naturally did not care. He directly destroyed the aftermath and helped Fong Qingshan. At the same time, ancestor Tian Xie snorted coldly, and the crack in the void instantly healed, as if nothing had happened before. For ancestor Tian Xie, this was a great loss of face. Not only did he not get rid of Fong Qingshan, but he also almost lost the evil Embark, the Holy Sun. Moreover, with Fong Qingshan's potential, today's karma would cause trouble in the future. Thinking of the ancient demon sect and the heavenly Buddha clan, he seemed to be able to see the future of the heavenly evil clan. Although he did not continue to attack Fong Qingshan because of the rules, and of course, more importantly because of the eternal green lotus, he did not continue to attack Fong Qingshan. However, if the aftershocks hit Fong Qingshan with his current condition, even if he did not die, he would be severely injured. In this way, he could also vent his anger. However, he did not expect to be ruined by the two-faced emperor again. It would be strange if he was in a good mood. However, it was not only the officials who were allowed to set fires, but not the common people. Therefore, regarding this, neither the two-faced emperor nor Fong Qingshan cared much. The former was not afraid at all, while the latter was not afraid of itches when he had many lice. Thank you for saving me, Emperor. If you need my help in the future, just let me know. Fong Qingshan will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. After Fong Qingshan took a deep breath, he hurriedly bowed to the two-faced emperor to express his gratitude. Today, it was all thanks to him. Otherwise, Fong Qingshan would have been finished. Not to mention the fact that he had resisted the attack of the heavenly evil ancestor. Just the impact of the aftermath just now, without the two-faced emperor, although he would not have died, it was enough to make him suffer. However, he was not related to the two-faced emperor, and he had even taken the title of the first divine emperor from him. He really did not know why the two-faced emperor would help him. Moreover, owing the two-faced emperor a favor, a karma, would not be so easy to repay in the future. No need. The great Tao walks alone, and the great Tao walks together. If you really want to thank me, grow up quickly. After breaking through to the peak of the Emperor realm, just fight with me. If this can let me see a wider sky, I should be the one thanking you. Hearing this, the two-faced emperor looked at Fong Qingshan and seemed to be able to guess what he was thinking. He chuckled and broke his scruples. Okay. Hearing this, Fong Qingshan nodded without hesitation. Fighting with the two-faced emperor would not only solve the karma on his body, but also put his all into a fight with the two-faced emperor, which was not something that anyone could do. After all, an opponent was rare. Although the two-faced emperor wanted to break through the bottleneck by fighting with him, when the time came, Fong Qingshan could also break through the bottleneck by fighting with him. This was a win-win situation. It could be said that this was a win-win situation for him. So why would he hesitate? Seeing this, the two-faced emperor nodded to himself and then disappeared. For a time, the whole void returned to calm. If it were not for the fact that Fong Qingshan fell hollowed out, he would have thought that nothing had happened. Chapter 1733. Phew, it's finally over. After calming down, Fong Qingshan heaved a sigh of relief. This time, he had really narrowly escaped death. It was even more dangerous than the last time he was in the Fallen Dragon's secret realm and the Xingyi Emperor's possession. Although the Fallen Dragon's secret realm was dangerous, he still had the Tao Will sect to rely on. Thus, Zhuge Jin came to his rescue. This allowed Fong Qingshan to experience that it was good to enjoy the shade under a big tree. When the Xingyi Heavenly Monarch tried to take over Fong Qingshan's body, the situation was equally perilous. However, Fong Qingshan was abnormally clear-headed. Even though he was startled, he didn't panic. He even played along with the Xingyi Heavenly Monarch's plan. Even though the process was a little dangerous, Fong Qingshan had obtained great benefits. And this time, it was really a narrow escape. The gap between him and the heavenly evil ancestor was too great, and he did not have any backing to rely on. There was no door to fortune or misfortune. Only people could bring it upon themselves. This was also his own fault. If it wasn't for him wanting to spy on the heavenly evil clan, he wouldn't have attracted the attention of the heavenly evil ancestor. Fortunately, his luck was not bad and his talent was outstanding, with the great Tao Source will and the two emperors to look out for him. Otherwise, Fang Qingshan did not dare to imagine that outcome at all. Although the matter of the fallen dragon's secret realm and the matter of the Xingyi Emperor's possession were dangerous, in the end, he could still fight to the death and drag others down with him. However, against the heavenly evil ancestor, even if he stood still and used all his strength, he would not be able to harm him. Didn't you see that he could crush me to death with a single finger? Fortunately, it was all over. It was over. However, the heavenly evil ancestor, the heavenly evil clan. Although Fang Qingshan did not say anything vicious in his heart, he secretly took note of it. It was not too late for a gentleman to take revenge. The heavenly evil ancestor had attacked him and almost killed him. This matter was not over. However, Fang Qingshan did not put on a brave front and clamor, because he knew that not only would it not help, it would also bring about a fatal disaster. Did he really think that these people would follow the rules? If they followed the rules, they wouldn't have attacked him. If he dared to have any bad thoughts now, he might be slapped in the face. Therefore, Fang Qingshan only deepened the memories of the heavenly evil ancestor and the heavenly evil clan in his heart. He did not think too much about anything else. There's plenty of time in the future. Let's just wait and see. Fang Qingshan muttered to himself. He calmed himself down and restored his magic power. Then, he took a step forward and returned to Pan Gu's chaos world. Speaking of which, ever since Fang Qingshan and Yin Xieho left the Pan Gu chaotic world to fight in the boundless void, everyone from Desolation was trembling with fear. They were afraid that Fang Qingshan would be defeated and they would die. Especially after that, the battle between Fang Qingshan and Yin Xieho was so big. Even though they were not in the primal chaos, even though they were far away from it, they still felt what it meant to be like a prison, like a mountain or an ocean, like life and death were in the hands of others. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan had finally returned safely. Everyone from Desolation couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. However, the old problem was gone, and a new one came. Hutu and the others were fine, but Hongjun, Ro, and the others were different. With Fang Qingshan's current cultivation, it was too easy for him to see through people's hearts. He quickly sensed that something was wrong and couldn't help but shake his head. Fang Qingshan, who had returned to his hometown, fought for so long and almost suffered a calamity, wanted to recuperate in the Pan Gu chaotic world. At this time, he naturally didn't have the mood to do so. After catching up with Hutu and the others, he left something for Shura's sovereign and made some arrangements. Then he turned around and left. For one thing, it was lonely at the top. They were not in the same world, so they didn't have much in common. Hutu and the others were not even divine emperors, but Fang Qingshan was already a venerable emperor, especially when he had just integrated the origin energy of the Xingyi emperor and the real spirit original spirit into his body. He was not a venerable emperor, but he was better than one. After all, the Great Way was a solitary path, and there were too few people who could walk together. That was why two venerable emperors valued Fang Qingshan so much that they didn't hesitate to become enemies with the heavenly evil clan. He wanted to establish an opponent that was on par with him. Only when they were well matched could they fight. Only when they tried their best could they release their potential to the fullest. Only when they were well matched could they break through. Of course, the most important thing was what he had said before. People's hearts changed. The most difficult thing to control was people's hearts, which changed with time. When Fang Qingshan first showed up, the people of the Desolation clan were overjoyed because Fang Qingshan's appearance gave them hope. However, this time, the crisis was over. What Fang Qingshan showed them was that they had refused the tiger at the front door, but the wolf at the back door. They could go through trials and tribulations together, but they couldn't share wealth with each other. At this moment, they were thinking about their own interests. Fang Qingshan's existence was a serious threat to their interests. With his means, it was too easy for him to occupy the Pangu chaotic world. Fong Qingshan shrugged his shoulders. How could a sparrow know the ambition of a great swan? He was measuring the heart of a great man with his own mean measure. However, he didn't care too much. After all, it was human nature. For Fong Qingshan, if it were in the past, he might have had such thoughts. But now, although the Pangu chaotic world was not bad, to him, it was not bad at all. With the skill of stone gambling, where could he not accumulate wealth? Why would he need to work hard to manage a chaotic world? Therefore, he only plundered the chaotic world, but he didn't think about occupying a place to be king. After all, he didn't want to build a foundation. Moreover, with the timeless arc around, wouldn't it be great to be free and unfettered? As for the Azura clan, if they had the ability to dominate the chaotic world, Fong Qingshan would be happy to see it happen. If they didn't have the ability, as long as he was alive, they would still have a place. Besides, if he really couldn't stay in the Pangu chaotic world, he still had the blood sail in the timeless Arkansas. Moreover, he had just promised the two-faced Izun that he would break through as soon as possible and fight him. Naturally, he couldn't break his promise. How could he do that if he stayed in the Pangu chaotic world? The atmosphere wasn't right. It would be awkward if he stayed. Moreover, the great Tao was right in front of him, so he naturally had to advance courageously. Therefore, he turned around and left, continuing to pursue his great Tao. After leaving the Pangu chaotic world, Fong Qingshan didn't hesitate too much this time. He headed straight for his destination. In fact, if he hadn't sensed that something was wrong with the Pangu chaotic world while he was patrolling the world, he wouldn't have rushed back immediately. He would have reached his destination a long time ago. Where exactly was his destination this time? The two-realm battlefield. Yes, this time, Fong Qingshan's destination was the two-realm battlefield, which was as famous as the endless abyss, the river of space-time, and other places. Chapter 1734. The boundless void and the myriad realms were so vast that even ordinary venerable sovereigns did not know the exact number of people living in it. In addition to tens of thousands of chaotic worlds, there was also a desolate void, as well as countless danger lands in the chaotic worlds that covered the entire void. There were mixed prime-level danger lands like the 1000B Secret Realm and the gloomy Corpse Mountains, immortal-level danger lands like the Fallen Dragon Secret Realm, Divine Emperor-level danger lands like the Misfortune Storm, and Emperor-level danger lands like the Emperor Killing Valley. Of course, in addition to danger lands, there were also unpredictable and more dangerous natural disasters. Generally speaking, danger lands were formed by the combination of natural disasters and the void. For example, the land of Misfortune Windstorm could be described as a natural disaster or a dangerous place. It could be called a natural disaster, but it didn't move. It could be called a danger land, but it was like a natural disaster. Putting these things aside, natural disasters and danger lands were generally divided into mixed prime, immortal, divine emperor, and venerable emperor levels, just like the cultivation realms. As for those below mixed prime, those below mixed prime didn't have the ability to walk in the void, so they couldn't form danger lands or natural disasters. However, this was only the general situation. The real situation was that above venerable emperor levels, there were forbidden danger lands similar to forbidden secret techniques. For example, the Endless Abyss, the River of Time and Space, the Emperor's Tomb, the two-realm battlefield, and so on. The reason why they were separated from ordinary Emperor-level danger lands and natural disasters was that ordinary Venerable Emperor danger lands weren't so dangerous as long as they were careful. At least, not many people died there. However, the number of venerable emperors who died in these places was unimaginable. The lowest number was more than 3 digits. Previously, when the Xingyi Emperor failed to possess Fong Qingshan, the great path in the outside world was shaken and the heavens wept with blood. The commotion was so great that it shook the heavens. However, in these places, the death of venerable sovereigns wasn't a common occurrence, but it wasn't something new either. The reason why the death of venerable sovereigns didn't appear in the outside world was because they were afraid of causing panic. In these places, ordinary people, or those below the divine emperor level without any background, didn't know. Even many divine emperors weren't qualified to know the specific situation of these places, especially in the two-realm battlefield. Perhaps people in other places, such as the Thearch's tomb, the river of space-time, and the endless abyss, might know about it. However, in the two-realm battlefield, unless one reached a certain realm and status, it was impossible to know about it. The reason why Feng Qingshan knew about this place was because he had obtained the title of the #1 God Emperor not long ago. He was famous for the great Tao and toured the world. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to have much understanding of this place. This was because in the Tao Palace of the Tao, sect, and even in the memories of the Xingyi Heavenly Emperor, this place was a taboo. Of course, this didn't mean that Feng Qingshan didn't have the right to know about this place. It was just that the time since he broke through was too short, and no one had told him yet. With his title as the #1 Divine Emperor, it was only a matter of time before he found out. Speaking of which, these places were so dangerous that even venerable sovereigns had died here. Why had Feng Qingshan chosen to come here? In fact, the reason was very simple. Although this place was a little dangerous, riches were sought amidst danger. The more dangerous a place was, the more opportunities there would be. As long as one could grab hold of them, it would not be difficult to soar to the sky. Logically speaking, Feng Qingshan shouldn't have been so impatient. After all, his foundation was already so solid that it could not be said that no one in all heavens could match him, but it was at least one of the top 3. Moreover, with his stone gambling skill, as long as he cultivated step by step, it was only a matter of time before he broke through the peak of venerable sovereigns and even reached the level of two-faced sovereigns. However, Feng Qingshan didn't choose this safe path. No, it should be said that he had originally planned to do so. But just like he had sealed the origin and real spirit of the Xingyi Heavenly Emperor and thought that he would open them later, he had still opened them in advance when he was fighting with the Yin Xiaohou. Plans could not keep up with changes. The reason why he changed his mind was because he had changed his mind, but the situation forced him to. The old ancestor Tianxia's attack had put too much pressure on Feng Qingshan. Although he had seen venerable sovereigns and even peak venerable sovereigns before. Storm Sword Emperor, Xingyi Heavenly Emperor, two-faced sovereigns, but these people had more or less all kinds of problems. They were either not in their best condition or they didn't attack him. But this time, the old ancestor Tianxia's attack on Feng Qingshan made him feel the crisis of death. The feeling of not being able to struggle and being crushed like an ant was really uncomfortable. Anyway, Feng Qingshan didn't want to experience it again. And if he didn't want to face such a situation again, he could only cultivate hard and do his best to break through. Moreover, he had promised the two-faced sovereigns to break through as soon as possible and then cut off the karma between them. Although the old ancestor didn't ask him to do anything, Feng Qingshan didn't want to cultivate step by step anymore. And if he wanted to break through quickly, the only way was to fight. Keep fighting. Only in this way could he digest the foundation of the Xingyi Heavenly Emperor that he had just integrated into his body. And in the all heavens, apart from the tidal tower and the constant challenges, there was only one place where Feng Qingshan could fight to his heart's content, and that was the two-realm battlefield. Having said that, he had to introduce the two-realm battlefield. As the name suggested, the two-realm battlefield was a place where two worlds fought. It was just like the battlefield of desolation from before. However, this place was even more vast. Compared to this place, the battlefield of desolation wasn't even worth mentioning. To say that he paled in comparison would be to say that he was giving him too much credit. The two realms naturally referred to two worlds. However, the two worlds here definitely didn't refer to the small thousand worlds, the medium thousand worlds, or the great thousand worlds. They weren't two worlds of desolation, nor were they two chaotic worlds. Instead, they were two boundless voids, two heavens, and 10,000 worlds. Yes, the two realms referred to two boundless voids and 10,000 worlds. As the saying goes, there's always someone better than you out there. Beyond desolation, there was desolation. Beyond the primal chaos, there was primal chaos. Beyond the heavens, there was naturally a heavens. However, which world wasn't called boundless voids or 10,000 worlds? It was called the Little Hongmeng world. Many people didn't even know about this battlefield. They hadn't even heard of it. As for participation, without the strength of a peak divine emperor, one wouldn't even be qualified to enter. Moreover, not every peak divine emperor was qualified. One had to be at least a peak divine emperor with a yellow title or above. Moreover, although divine emperors weren't completely equivalent to cannon fodder, their main fighting power was indeed venerable sovereigns. Why were there so few venerable sovereigns in the boundless voids and 10,000 worlds? Apart from other miscellaneous reasons, such as spiritual travel, secluded cultivation, worldly affairs, and traveling to dangerous places, the most important reason was that most venerable sovereigns were constantly fighting in the two-realm battlefield. Yes, fighting. Since it was a battlefield, there was no reason not to fight. Chapter 1735. Fighting was the best teacher. Fang Qingshan had been fighting in the Tidal Tower to master all his theurgies and create the reincarnation Tao-seeking fist. At this moment, he was willing to take the risk of going to the two-realm battlefield to fight more battles and digest the power of the Xingyi martial emperor in his body. Under the siege of the Holy Buddha clan and the Heavenly Demon clan, the two-faced venerable sovereign had fought his way to the sky and even created the forbidden secret method of 3 venerables, 3 kowtows as a divine emperor. The fist emperor had also fought everywhere with his iron fists and was invincible. With these examples, how could these venerable sovereigns not know the benefits of fighting? Moreover, the higher one's cultivation level was the slightest progress was gratifying, not to mention a small level. That was because at that time, other than meditating and painstakingly cultivating, there was basically no other way to improve. How many venerable sovereigns had been stuck in the same place for thousands of years after breaking through? After all, before venerable sovereigns, there were all kinds of elixirs, heaven and earth treasures, and blessed paradises. After venerable sovereigns, although there were things that could help their cultivation, they were obviously very rare. The rarer something was, the more precious it was. It was easy to imagine how precious such things were. It was impossible for ordinary venerable sovereigns to get them under normal circumstances. As for luck, although merit also had an effect, it was the same as heavenly treasures. Ordinary ones had no effect at all. It was not an easy task to obtain enough luck and merit. To get luck that could help venerable sovereigns, it had to be at least like the Tao Will School, and it had to be the Tao Will School when it was at its peak. It could be seen that with such luck, merits were even harder to get. However, in addition to heaven and earth treasures, luck and merits, the only way to help them break through quickly was through fighting. This was why the two-faced venerable sovereigns were willing to give up their pride and stand up for Fang Qingshan. He needed an expert of the same level to fight to his heart's content. As for why he didn't find anyone else besides Fang Qingshan, do you think he didn't? But the experts at his level, such as Patriarch Tian Xie, Immeasurable Sage Buddha, Eternal Emperor, Primordial Sky Demon, and so on, were all old monsters. Not to mention that the older one was, the more timid they became, but they were all very protective of their own bodies, and were not willing to go all out against him. Back then, he had fought his way to the Primordial Demon sect and the Holy Buddha race, forcing the Primordial Heavenly Demon and the Infinite Holy Buddha to make a move. In the end, when they saw that the situation was not in their favor, they gave in. You want to fight to the death. It was impossible, so he didn't get what he wanted. Of course, another reason was that the two-faced venerable sovereign's cultivation was not high enough to force his opponent into a desperate situation. Now that he had the strength, he couldn't just ignore it. Being strong wasn't scary. What was scary was being strong and crazy, without any scruples. If he really didn't care, then he wouldn't be facing just one or two of them, but a group of them. After all, although the two-faced venerable emperor was powerful, he had not reached the point where he could become the enemy of the whole world. Although he wanted to make a breakthrough, he did not want to court death. As for the new generation of masters, let alone the fact that there were no masters at the same level as him, even if there were few of them would be willing to give it their all. Therefore, he had formed a cause and effect with Fong Qingshan, so he had to fight. Of course, he didn't put all his eggs in one basket. As long as it was someone like Fong Qingshan with potential, he would form karma with them in advance. As for how many flowers would bloom and how many fruits would bear in the end, it all depended on God's will. Of course, what he didn't know was that even if there was no cause and effect, as long as the two-faced venerable emperor was willing, Fong Qingshan would be happy to go to that stage. After all, if he really cultivated to the peak venerable emperor level, he would absolutely not be afraid of anyone. Of course, in addition to the benefits of fighting, there were two other reasons why these venerable emperors were willing to stay here. One of them was similar to the reason why Fong Qingshan came here. There were countless opportunities here, which could help them reach a higher level. In order to encourage everyone to fight hard, they couldn't just let the horses run away without giving them food. However, if they wanted to get opportunities, they couldn't get them without putting in effort. Since it was a battlefield, they needed military merits. In the two-realm battlefield, either the east wind prevailed over the west wind, or the west wind prevailed over the east wind. If you wanted to invade me, I also wanted to invade you. This process, of course, required killing and bloodshed. This was also why so many venerable emperors had died here. In fact, the number of venerable emperors was not that bad. Many divine emperors had died. Speaking of which, fighting could help in cultivation, earn battle merits, in exchange for fortuitous opportunities. Why not? As for danger, or is there no danger? Fong Qingshan had almost died just to deal with demon extermination, who he thought he could capture easily, not to mention other places. Moreover, the Great Way was difficult. Wealth came from danger. Without this awareness, there was no need to cultivate at all. Of course, the world was so big that nothing was too strange. Some were willing to take great risks, seeking wealth from danger. Naturally, there were also those who were content with the status quo and unwilling to take risks. Especially here, where even venerable emperors could die. For some people, the mere mention of it was enough to make them pale. They had worked hard to cultivate to this level. Even if they couldn't break through, they would live as long as the heavens and be famous all over the world. Many people were actually unwilling to take the risk to come here. Unfortunately, this was not up to them. If you don't do it and I don't do it, then it'll really be over. This was especially true in a place like the two-realm battlefield. Yes, no one wanted to take risks. But if they thought this way, they would probably only benefit the people of the Little Hongmeng realm. Therefore, there were coercive measures for this group of people. As long as they became venerable emperors, they had to come to the two-realm battlefield to serve. Of course, they were not required to stay here and fight until the last moment. If this was the case, it would not be rare to see venerable emperors in all heavens, but there would be no venerable emperors at all. As long as they achieved a certain amount of military merits, they could choose to leave or stay. The Sword Emperor of Storm, the Great Emperor of Xing Yi, and the Great Ancestor of the Tao sect were people who chose to leave after reaching the required number of military merits. The one who had made this compulsory request was the Supreme Alliance, which was mentioned by the two venerable emperors to the Great Ancestor of the Heavenly Evil sect. The so-called Supreme Alliance was an alliance formed by all the venerable emperors. Although it was just an alliance, it was undoubtedly the most powerful force in all heavens. There were countless factions in the all heavens. There was no need to talk about the 5 great clans of the Shan chaotic world that were ranked at the bottom. There were the Tao sect and Eternal Heaven sect that were ranked at the top. Then there were the Heavenly Evil race, Sage Buddha race, Immortal Spirits race, Supreme Emperor dynasty, Eternal Emperor dynasty, etc. But there was always a force floating above them, and that was the Supreme Alliance. Chapter 1736. The All Heavens was vast and full of strange stories and extraordinary people. As the saying went, there was no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. Those who could be called outstanding in a certain field were nothing. Even those who were overlords were nothing. However, there were very few who could be number one. Not to mention whether or not they could do it, it was a question of whether or not they dared to do it. Fang Qingshan had obtained the title of number one God Emperor with the help of the Tidal Tower and the origin of the Great Path. However, Yin Xiaohe was unconvinced and dared to make a move. This was only the number one God Emperor, not to mention the others. As long as anyone dared to put the title of number one on their head, what awaited them would be endless trouble. The world was bustling for benefits, and the world was bustling for benefits. For the sake of fame and benefits, countless people had been harmed. Some people, even if they didn't have the ability to do so, would still give it a try. Putting everything else aside, just dealing with too many of them was extremely vexing. However, there was an exception, and that was the Supreme Alliance. Speaking of the Supreme Alliance, it was an ancient force that had existed since the beginning of the All Heavens. Moreover, no matter how the All Heavens changed, whether it was affected by the cataclysm, the invasion of the Little Hongmeng world, or the impact of the rising stars, there had never been a force that could shake its position. Number one, it was always at the top of the All Heavens. If the All Heavens Supreme Force's ranking fluctuated from time to time. After all, a man couldn't be happy for 1,000 days, and flowers couldn't bloom for 100 days. Moreover, the top 10, top 20, and top 30 forces didn't have much difference in strength. Today, one had an extra genius. Tomorrow, the old ancestor had a breakthrough. The day after that, someone found a paradise, and so on. All of these could affect the ranking of the forces. However, the one that never changed was the Supreme Alliance, which was at the top of the All Heavens Supreme Forces ranking. No matter how the other forces changed, whether they rose or fell, declined or grew, they would always be number one. This wasn't because the Supreme Alliance was the one that published the All Heavens Supreme Forces ranking. Instead, it was their actual strength that was displayed there. It was widely acknowledged by the world. There was a saying in the mortal world that the world's martial arts originated from Shaolin. This was because the people who put down the butcher's knife and became Buddha immediately became Buddha. In fact, the world's martial arts originated from Shaolin. If he was placed here, he would become the emperor of the world, entering the Supreme Alliance. Yes, 80% of the venerable emperors in all heavens belonged to the Supreme Alliance. Even the infinite Buddha of the Holy Buddha clan, the heavenly evil ancestor of the heavenly evil clan, the two-faced emperor of the Supreme Emperor dynasty, and the eternal emperor of the eternal emperor dynasty had their own forces, but they were still listed in the Supreme Alliance as guests. This was a faction, but it was different from a family or a sect. Instead, it was more like an imperial dynasty. As the saying goes, the sea can accommodate hundreds of rivers. Of course, in addition to these foreign venerable emperors, the Supreme Alliance also had its own direct descendants. Although it was impossible to say that all the emperors in the world shared one stone, the Supreme Alliance's emperors alone had 8 stones, the top-ranked Supreme Forces had 1 stone, and all the other forces since ancient times had 1 stone. But if the world's venerable emperors shared 1 stone, then the Supreme Alliance's venerable emperors occupied 3 stones, almost 4 stones. The top-ranked Supreme Forces occupied 2 stones to 3 stones. Since ancient times, other forces occupied 2 stones to 3 stones. Otherwise, how could the Supreme Alliance control the rise and fall of the world? Did you think other forces, such as the Supreme Emperor dynasty, the Heavenly Evil clan, and the Holy Buddha clan, would be willing to have a mountain over their heads? It was because the Supreme Alliance was too strong, so strong that it could compete with all heavens by itself. Although they were at a slight disadvantage, the others didn't dare to take the risk of losing 800 men to fight. After all, whether it was worth it or not, just the fact that the Sandpiper and Clam were fighting the fishermen was enough to make them act cautiously. Moreover, although the Supreme Alliance was strong, it wasn't overbearing. Apart from the mandatory requirements of the two-realm battlefield, their presence wasn't strong at all. In all heavens, in terms of reputation, many people probably knew of the Supreme Emperor dynasty, the Holy Buddha clan, and the Heavenly Evil clan, but they didn't know of the Supreme Alliance. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a saying that all the venerable emperors in the world joined the Supreme Alliance. Moreover, a snake couldn't be without a head. If it wasn't for the Supreme Alliance, the whole heavens would probably be a plate of loose sand. If there were no external enemies, it would be fine, but if they were to face the attack of the little Hongmeng world, they would probably suffer a great loss. Therefore, although the two-faced venerable emperor, the heavenly evil ancestor, and the others didn't want to have a mountain over their heads, after weighing the pros and cons, there was no other way. Since they couldn't destroy him, they could only join the Supreme Alliance, drag him down from the inside. In this way, although the venerable emperors in the world joining the Supreme Alliance would weaken the cohesion of the Supreme Alliance, at the same time, it would strengthen the Supreme Alliance's reputation. In all heavens, as long as there was a major event, they would leave their traces. As long as there was credibility, it would almost always be launched by them. The Supreme Alliance was equivalent to the existence of the United Nations, but compared to the United Nations, they were much more confident. They couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Putting all this aside, although Fang Qingshan was no longer Invenerable Emperor, he was still not Invenerable Emperor. Therefore, he didn't have to rush to serve in the two-realm battlefield. If he really broke through, even if he didn't want to, he was afraid that someone would force him to come. The reason why he was willing to come was because he wanted to fight with many experts, strengthen his foundation, and digest the foundation of the Xingyi Great Emperor. In fact, it was more for battle achievements and luck. There was no need to say much about battle achievements. This thing was precious, and it was also rare in all heavens. This thing was equivalent to the Tao value of the Tao sect. With this thing, he could exchange it for all kinds of treasures from the Supreme Alliance's treasure vault. The Supreme Alliance's treasure vault was different from the Tao sect's secret vault. This treasure vault was the commonwealth of the entire heavens, the infinite void. What was in the heavens? It was here. What wasn't in the heavens? It was here. Spiritual root, blessed enclave, great Tao, rule, venerable emperor preaching, level 4 supreme treasure. There were only things that you couldn't think of, and there was nothing that couldn't be here. However, the things here couldn't be touched, not even by the people of the Supreme Alliance. Special funds were used for special purposes. The emperors had agreed that 70% of the items obtained in the two-realm battlefield and large-scale battles would be used to exchange for the cultivators participating in the battle, and 30% would be sent to the Supreme Alliance's treasure vault to become the hidden treasures. On one hand, it was the foundation of the heavens, and on the other hand, it was to reward the people who had made great contributions to the entire infinite void and the two-realm battlefield. Why did so many people flock to the two-realm battlefield, even though they knew it was dangerous? A large part of the reason was because of this treasure vault. Although Fang Qingshan could obtain a lot of things through his stone gambling skill, this required luck and time. Moreover, it was time-consuming and laborious, and he might not be able to get what he liked. But here, as long as he had enough battle achievements, it wasn't too much of a problem to exchange for something satisfactory. Chapter 1737. Although he had to take some risks, there was nothing that wasn't risky. The stone gambling skill didn't seem to be dangerous, but once it was exposed, the danger it would bring would be no less than what great ancestor Tian Xie had done to him. It might even be more dangerous. Besides, the two-realm battlefield was a little dangerous. But it wasn't a hopeless place with no chance of survival. If that was the case, there wouldn't be so many people here. After all, there were not only venerable sovereigns here, but also divine emperors. Most of them didn't want to. A few of them wanted to sharpen themselves like Fang Qingshan, or they didn't have enough potential, so they wanted to break through the bottleneck and stimulate their potential to break through to venerable sovereign. With Fang Qingshan's current ability, as long as he wasn't really unlucky enough to run into an upper-level venerable sovereign, he could even fight against a medium-level venerable sovereign. As for high-level venerable sovereigns, although there were many of them here, dragons didn't live with snakes and immortals didn't gather with humans. They had their own circles, and they wouldn't run into each other easily. Furthermore, with Fang Qingshan's luck, as long as there was not too much of a problem, There would not be a time when he would not even be able to drink cold water. Otherwise, he would not have been able to survive from the hands of the heavenly evil ancestor. Speaking of luck, it was even more important. As the saying went, when the time comes, the world will help, but when the time comes, the hero will lose his freedom. There was no doubt that luck was important to Fong Qingshan. First of all, if he wanted to upgrade the all-heaven chessboard, he needed a huge amount of luck. This treasure had great potential. Although it wasn't as good as the Timeless Ark, it was still one of the best in all heavens. However, it wasn't easy to gather luck. In addition to a breakthrough in cultivation, he had to strengthen his force. Force, strength, and luck complemented each other. However, whether it was strength or force, Fong Qingshan couldn't improve them in a short time. If he wanted to break through to Venerable Sovereign, he had to strengthen his foundation, which had been shaken by the origin of Xing, Great Emperor. As for force, although Fong Qingshan wasn't alone, he really didn't have any force. Even if he counted the Dowell School, it wasn't a big deal. However, nothing in the world was difficult for a determined person. The East was not bright, but the West was bright. His influence and strength couldn't be increased for the time being, but that didn't mean that there was no other way. Seizing fate. That's right, apart from the two methods mentioned above, there was also the method of seizing luck. However, the name didn't sound like a good thing, at least in all heavens. In the past, there had been people who had done such things. It was just like the dragon and phoenix in the desolation, and the witch and demon race for hegemony. However, the final result was the same. Not only did they not succeed, but they also lost their lives. Therefore, stealing one's luck was a taboo. For no rhyme or reason, one might be attacked by everyone. However, there was one place that was not a problem. In the two-realm battlefield. Killing people and stealing their luck. Killing the people of the Little Hong Meng Great World, and seizing the Little Hong Meng Great World's fate. Not only was it not a problem, it was also a meritorious deed. After all, why did the two-realm battlefield appear? Didn't both sides want to invade each other's territory and resources? Why were there so few people in the outside world willing to accept challenges from others? Apart from their reputation, they would also lose their luck if they lost. However, in the two-realm battlefield, these problems were no longer problems. As long as one had the ability, as long as one's life was tough enough, one could fight for everything with the weapons in their hands. The more one killed, the better. Luck was a good thing. If one's luck was good and high, one could turn misfortune into fortune and misfortune into fortune. This time, the reason why Fong Qingshan was able to escape unscathed from Patriarch Heavenly Evil's attack was mainly because he had enough luck. If not for the first Divine Sovereign's luck, would the Great Tao's origin will have taken action? If not for the sufficient luck, would the two Thearchs have arrived in time? In the desolation, why were the three sovereigns and five emperors on equal footing with saints? When the witch and demon race were at their peak, why did saints retreat? Wasn't it because of merit and luck? Therefore, even if it was for his own safety, Fong Qingshan had to accumulate more luck. Although it was not enough to rely on, the Great Tao was the foundation. However, one couldn't go far with just the Great Tao. One also needed Tao protection means. Luck was a very, very important means. The two-realm battlefield was somewhat similar to the river of space-time. It was both in the all-heavens and outside the all-heavens. Half-hidden, half-hidden, half-hidden. If one didn't have any means, even if they were nearby, they wouldn't be able to find any traces of them. Fortunately, although Fong Qingshan didn't have anyone to guide him, he had already memorized the coordinates of this place in the Timeless Ark's Jotian star map when he was patrolling the heavens. It could be said that the all heavens were like the lines on his palm. There was nothing he didn't know. Where he wanted to go was just a matter of time and speed. In the void, a spaceship with wings on its back flapped its sails and turned into a long bridge. In an instant, it had traveled an unknown distance. Its speed was so fast that it had surpassed the limits of thought, without the obstruction of space-time. Not long after, it passed one chaotic world after another. However, even so, it would still take a certain amount of time to reach the two-realm battlefield. Fang Qingshan wasn't anxious at all. After all, he couldn't eat hot tofu in haste. Moreover, what he needed to do now was to recuperate his body. Although he won the battle with Yin Xiaoho in the end, the level of danger and exhaustion was even greater than when he fought with two venerable sovereigns. After all, he had the protection of the tidal tower last time. Even if he died, it would just be a dream. Perhaps he would have a different feeling when he was reborn from death. However, it was different this time. If he lost and died this time, it would be the end of everything. Therefore, he was very tense. Of course, the most important thing was that Xing Yi Great Sovereign Soar Seal had been opened and integrated into his body. Although Fang Qingshan had vented his anger, he still couldn't take it. Moreover, there were many internal injuries in his body that needed to be recuperated. Although it wasn't a big deal, 1,000 miles of dike could be destroyed by an ant's nest, especially when he was about to go to the two-realm battlefield. It was a place where even venerable sovereigns could die. He couldn't be too careful. Therefore, Fang Qingshan recuperated his body and rushed to the two-realm battlefield. What he didn't know was that the all heavens were stirred up again because of him. Previously, Fang Qingshan had won the title of the first divine emperor. Moreover, he had toured the all heavens with a great way. What grand scene! However, many people didn't agree with him. It was like how scholars looked down on each other. There were quite a number of people who wanted to compete with the Yin Xiaoho. After all, the tidal tower was just the tidal tower. Chapter 1738. Although the tidal tower was an authority, but generally speaking, what everyone referred to was his potential, not his real combat strength. After all, authority was used to question, and even potential was only a reference, not an absolute confirmation. In fact, this was also very normal. As the saying goes, soldiers are impermanent, and water is impermanent. Nothing is unchanging. If there was anything that was absolute, then it would be ridiculous. Just like combat strength, there were many factors that affected him. It could be a spirit treasure, a magical ability, a piece of experience, and so on that could change his combat strength. Therefore, although Fang Qingshan had obtained the title of the first divine emperor in the tidal tower, some people did not agree with it, especially when the opponent in the tidal tower was the projection of the tidal tower. Although it was vivid and almost identical to the real body, it was only almost. Not to mention whether the other party had hidden his strength back then, whether it was like the Marquis Yin Xie when he was fighting for the title of Primordial Chaos, unlucky, encountering a top powerhouse before he could display his strength, and so on. But the person who challenged the tower was at his peak, but could display his strength at will. The most important thing was that he could rely on the protection of the tidal tower to attack crazily. In this kind of unequal situation, naturally, some people felt that they were willing to be cut and dare to pull the emperor off his horse. Because with the protection of the tidal tower, anyone could think that if they were to go all out, they could also do it. Or even if they could not do it, they could say that it was bad luck. In any case, seeing was believing. If they did not witness it with their own eyes, they would not give up until they reached the Yellow River. But this time, he fought with the Marquis Yin Xie, and it was a real battle record. Because the Marquis Yin Xie was famous, not because of the Heavenly Evil Clan, but because of himself. It was said earlier that if the Heavenly Evil Clan's holy son wanted to grow, he must have experienced hundreds of battles and experienced countless killings, both external and internal. In any case, his road to fame was a road of killing, built by piling up the bones of his friends. As the saying goes, without comparison, there is no harm, and it is difficult to distinguish. The Marquis Yin Xie was so powerful, and Fang Qingshan defeated him. Wouldn't this battle strength be real? Although the two-faced divine emperor's name was more famous. However, there are always talented people in every generation, each leading the way for hundreds of years. Moreover, the battle between Fang Qingshan and the two-faced venerable emperor had also alarmed the heavens. However, most of the venerable sovereigns were only alarmed by the tidal tower. Moreover, the two-faced venerable emperor had become a taboo existence, and not many people knew about it. Forbidden? What was taboo? It was an existence that could not be spoken of. In fact, forefather Tian Xie and the others were the same. Humans were the most forgetful things. If something wasn't passed down, and if one didn't search for it in history, one would quickly forget about it. However, the demon Shay Marquis was different. His reputation was like thunder in this era. For Fang Qingshan to be able to fight on par with him, it was no wonder that people would think highly of him. Especially at the very end, Marquis Xie had repeatedly summoned the heavenly diabolical tribe's ancestral artifact, a pinnacle level 4 true treasure and a heavenly diabolical altar support. One had to know that even a level 4 supreme treasure would be an earth-shattering event, let alone an existence like the heavenly evil ancestral artifact. Needless to say, not only the heavenly evil ancestral artifact, but even the heavenly diabolical altar, the foundation of the heavenly diabolical tribe, was used together. That power, that formation, that scene, every one of them was felt by half of the boundless void. This was because Marquis Xie's cultivation was not high enough. Otherwise, if he had broken through to the venerable sovereign realm, most of the void would have felt it. On the other hand, Fang Qingshan had also unleashed all his means. He had even attracted the support of the eternal green lotus. The everlasting lotus, although its specific grade was unknown, was definitely a divine artifact that far surpassed the heavenly evil ancestral artifact and the heavenly diabolical altar. The impact of the collision was so great that half of the heavens were shaken. Especially at the last moment, if the two-faced venerable sovereigns had not taken action to smooth out the aftermath, not only Fang Qingshan, but also the nearby Pan-Gu chaotic world, and so on would have been affected. As a result, Fang Qingshan's name was finally made known. It was not like in the past, when Emperor Xingyi fell and the great Tao sang his name, they were not convinced. As the saying goes, pull one hair and the whole body will be affected. When a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs will ascend to heaven. Fang Qingshan now firmly held the title of the first divine emperor, and even went back and forth with the heavenly diabolical ancestor, which greatly benefited the Tao sect. In this regard, Fang Qingshan naturally did not know, and even if he knew, he would not care. For him, there was only one long-term goal, and that was to break through to the peak of the venerable sovereign realm as soon as possible, to reach the level of the two-faced venerable sovereign, the heavenly diabolical ancestor, and then cut off his karma with the two-faced venerable sovereign. As for breaking through to the 4th level and going against the flow of Hongmeng, this was not urgent, and he needed to plan slowly. As for the short-term goal, there was only one, and that was to strengthen his foundation and stabilize his strength. There were two kinds of goals, one of which was naturally to strengthen his strength and recuperate his body in preparation for breaking through to the venerable sovereign realm. The other was the timeless arc, to strive to earn more battle achievements and exchange for suitable supreme treasures to integrate into the timeless Arkansas. The third was to activate the stone gambling skill to find more and better supreme treasures. Not to mention these, after Fang Qingshan left the Pan-Gu chaotic world, a long time had passed, and he finally arrived at his destination. Sure enough, there is a completely different world. The aura here is completely different. He did not know how long it had been. It could have been a short period of time, or it could have been 100 years. After traversing an unknown distance of void and space-time, at a certain moment, the timeless arc passed through a layer of thin film. Fang Qingshan's vision blurred, and he could not help but squint slightly. After staring around, he felt that the aura here was different from that of the boundless void and the myriad worlds. This kind of aura was different from that of the myriad worlds and the boundless void. It was somewhat similar, somewhat familiar, but mostly unfamiliar. This was like a place outside the law. The spiritual energy, laws, heaven, and earth were not completely different, but one still had to adapt to it. At least for now, Fang Qingshan felt extremely uncomfortable in it. He could not move his body as if something was binding him. Fang Qingshan did not care about this. Although the two-realm battlefield was closely guarded in the Great Tao Palace and the memories of the Qingyi Emperor, there were still some records. He knew that this situation was only because the world had changed, and it would be fine as long as he adapted for a period of time. After all, this was also the boundless void, a part of the myriad worlds. It was just that it had merged with another small world, the Hongmeng Great World, which caused some changes in heaven and earth. Since he had already arrived, Fang Qingshan naturally did not need to be anxious. He looked around. It could be seen that heaven and earth were divided into two, but they were also one chaotic entity. Chapter 1739. The Two-Realm Battlefield. Those who didn't know would think that the world had just been created and hadn't completely stabilized, let alone evolved. Although that seemed to be the case. Although the world had been separated, it seemed to be merging at any moment. It was chaotic and indistinct. Of course, what frightened Fang Qingshan the most was the tragic atmosphere here. After all, the weakest people who died here were yellow-titled peak divine emperors, while the strongest were more than one or two peak emperor venerables. He didn't know if it was because this wasn't a complete world and was independent of the boundless void, worlds, and little Hongmeng world. There was no sea of blood, no reincarnation, no endless abyss, no ultimate. No, in addition, there were battles here all year round. Blood flowed like rivers, chilly winds blew, and bones piled up like mountains. Corpses formed seas, and ghostly wails and wolf howls filled the air. During this period of time, countless vengeful spirits floated up and down, wailing in pain, and it was a living purgatory on earth. In other words, if one died here, they wouldn't be able to reincarnate, unless the boundless void swallowed the little Hongmeng world one day, or the little Hongmeng world swallowed the worlds. For ordinary people, once they died, as long as they didn't enter reincarnation, they could turn into evil ghosts or zombies under certain conditions. Not to mention people with high cultivation. The more powerful they were, the easier it was for them to turn into these evil ghosts and monsters after they died. The higher the cultivation, the more powerful the ghosts and monsters they turned into. Although they might be restrained by Buddhist light, holy light, light of merit, and light of purification, they weren't afraid of death. Therefore, they were difficult and dangerous to deal with. Therefore, the dangers of the two-realm battlefield did not only come from the living. In other words, the enemies on the other side of the battlefield also came from the various perilous lands that had evolved naturally when the world had just been created, as well as these dead people who had fallen but could not transcend. Therefore, the two-realm battlefield was filled with danger everywhere. If one wasn't careful, one might fail miserably. Apart from the ground that was similar to the netherworld, the sky above was much cleaner. It was like heaven and earth, yin and yang, black and white, turbid and clear. If there was a living purgatory on earth, there would naturally be a fairyland-like sky. However, one could see that there was a continuous river of stars on it, and it was bright and resplendent. Within the river of stars were numerous dazzling and resplendent stars that glistened with the glow of treasures, and the faint fragrance of precious treasures enshrouded the area like mist and clouds. However, just like on the surface, even though it looked very beautiful, the safety was even more uncertain. On the ground, due to the dangerous environment, you might still be vigilant, but above ground, you had to be even more careful. That was because those resplendent stars seemed to be eternal stars a moment ago, but in the next moment, they could turn into short-lived fireworks. Therefore, from time to time, one could see ghosts wailing and wolves howling on the ground and brilliant fireworks in the sky. Heaven and earth are the same, but different. However, good fortune is accompanied by misfortune, and misfortune is accompanied by good fortune. There were always two sides to everything. Although this place was dangerous, it wasn't like there weren't any benefits. Because this was the beginning of the world, the laws here were still constantly evolving. This was also the reason why Fang Qingshan felt uncomfortable when he first entered. The laws here were still unstable and were still changing. This was a long process of adjustment, and there would only be results when one side swallowed the other. Apart from the tragic atmosphere on the battlefield, which made Fang Qingshan tremble involuntarily at the beginning, his eyes were almost bursting with golden flowers. Of course, this wasn't because he was dizzy, but because he was dazzled by the dazzling treasures in front of him. Previously, it was mentioned that many emperors in all heaven stayed in the two-realm battlefield. The reason why they were willing, besides the compulsory requirement, was more because of the opportunities here. As for the opportunities, they all came from the Supreme Alliance's treasury. But where did the Supreme Alliance's treasury come from? All heavens and realms, the boundless void? Some of them were, but most of them weren't. Although the heavens were large, after so many years of development, the resources had long been insufficient. Moreover, the heavens weren't ownerless. Although the Supreme Alliance was powerful, it couldn't ask for everything. Therefore, the origins of many treasures in the Supreme Alliance's treasury actually came from the two-realm battlefield. The two-realm battlefield was formed by the collision between the heavens and realms and the Little Hongmeng world. During this process of formation, it was like the creation of heaven and earth. All kinds of laws, spiritual qi, and profound meanings collided with each other and formed all kinds of treasures. In fact, this wasn't surprising, because the beginning of heaven and earth was the time when there were the most treasures. Just like in Desolation, when one was in the primordial dragon and phoenix, they might encounter treasures when they went out, but when it came to the Lich, it was already a little difficult. For the sake of the three corpses beheading spirit treasure, the people of the Purple Cloud Palace had almost fought to the death. As for later, in the apotheosis of the gods, the journey to the west, and Mount Shu, there was no need to talk about it. The further one went, the less resources there were. Speaking of which, what was surprising was that when the treasures were born in other places, it would take a long time for them to finally take shape. Besides the first wave, the number of treasures that were born would begin to decrease. But here it wasn't like that. As soon as the treasures appeared, they were completely formed, and the number of nurtures did not decrease with the passage of time. It seemed that as long as they weren't completely formed, they could continue to be nurtured. From time to time, heaven and earth collided, laws intertwined, yin and yang changed, the five elements reversed, and profound meanings merged. There were colorful streams of light. Purple clouds covered the sky. Heavenly flowers fell to the ground, and profound sounds were clear and melodious. Then, as strong winds blew, as stars fell, and as booming sounds rang out from time to time, it seemed like a meteor shower was falling from the sky. The streams of light were dazzling. Every stream of spiritual light was a treasure. Moreover, none of the treasures that were formed in the two-realm battlefield at the beginning of heaven and earth were of low quality. These treasures were at least of level 2 fine grade. Most of them were level 3, and a few of them had even reached level 4. However, the specifics could be confirmed by looking at the spiritual light of these treasures. The more intense the spiritual light, the higher the grade of the treasure. Of course, grade was grade, and the effects of the treasures were uncertain. Perhaps some treasures were of high grade, but their functions were of little value. However, as the saying went, heaven never bars one's way, and there were no useless treasures. Here, even if a treasure seemed to be of little value, it might have a different kind of profundity in another place. For example, some of the treasures that were integrated into the eternal divine furnace unit of Fang Qingshan's timeless arc might not be comparable to offensive or defensive treasures in the eyes of others. But in Fang Qingshan's eyes, they were more valuable than ordinary treasures. Chapter 1740. If he had seen so many treasures of such high quality elsewhere, Fang Qingshan would have taken them all in one fell swoop. After all, he was a person who would pluck the feathers of a goose when it passed by, especially when his cultivation was about to break through to Emperor Venerable Realm, and the strength of Mosquito Dowrin and the World Tree Doppelganger had also increased. He needed to spend more resources. Sigh, what a pity. However, looking at the treasures floating all over the sky, Fang Qingshan could only sigh. It was not that the quality of these treasures was bad, nor was it that his cultivation was too weak to catch up and collect these treasures. It was also not that Fang Qingshan was pure, nor was it that he had so many resources that he didn't care about these treasures at all. He didn't dare. Yes, it was all because he didn't have the guts. Not to mention Fang Qingshan, even an Emperor Venerable or a peak Emperor Venerable would be tempted to see this scene. It was not that they didn't want to, but they couldn't, because these treasures that seemed to be nurtured by heaven and earth actually had owners. Yes, they had owners. As for their owners, they were naturally the true masters of the two-realm battlefield, or rather the infinite void and the little Hongmeng world, the Supreme Alliance and the Supreme Palace. These treasures that were nurtured by heaven and earth all belonged to the Supreme Alliance and the Supreme Palace. There was no need to say more about the Supreme Alliance. As for the Supreme Palace, it was the biggest force in the little Hongmeng world. Its status, strength, and influence were completely similar to the Supreme Alliance in the Infinite Void and the Infinite Void. It might even be slightly better, because the Supreme Alliance was an alliance, although its own strength wasn't weak. But it was still a little idle. The Supreme Palace, on the other hand, was different. It was truly full of vigor and arrogance. As previously mentioned, if there were 30% of the Supreme Alliance's emperors in the world, then the Supreme Alliance's emperors could reach more than half of the emperors in the little Hongmeng Great World, which was similar to the Supreme Alliance's guest emperors. These were all digressions. Let's get back to the treasures. All the newly born treasures in the two-realm battlefield would be sensed by the Supreme Alliance and Supreme Palace members on both sides with their respective artifacts. Then, they would use treasures like the cornucopia to collect them and store them in the treasury to be used as rewards for those with outstanding achievements. Thus, there was only a single method to obtain fortuitous encounters in the two-realm battlefield, and it was through battle merits. With battle merits, everything would be fine. Without battle merits, it would be almost impossible to advance. Therefore, at this moment, although Fang Qingshan was drooling with desire, he knew his limits. He could only watch from afar and not make a move to snatch it. A look of envy appeared on his face. He watched as all sorts of treasures born in the sky and on the ground were bound and dragged away by invisible chains in the void. Of course, it wasn't that no one hadn't thought about them. After all, humans die in pursuit of wealth, just as birds die in pursuit of food. Unfortunately, most of them died in the end. However, there were 50 great Daos and 49 heavenly evolutions. There was a chance of survival. It wasn't that there weren't any fish that slipped through the net. If one's methods were superb and could deceive everyone, it wasn't impossible to fish for chestnuts in the fire. However, Fang Qingshan didn't have such methods and luck. Therefore, he could only feel a little regretful that a sumptuous banquet had nothing to do with him. In the two-realm battlefield, apart from these natural treasures, there were actually other things that people coveted. Those are nomological laws and great Daos. When heaven and earth were first born, the great Daos were revealed. Therefore, there was conflict between heaven and earth, the entanglement of nomological laws, and the formation of all sorts of treasures. Therefore, when heaven and earth were first born, all sorts of experts emerged one after another, just like in Desolation. However, after reaching Dao integration in Hongjun, the great Daos of heaven and earth were obscure. If one wanted to cultivate and spiritually wander, it would be very difficult. It wasn't that one couldn't cultivate or comprehend the great Daos, but compared to the past, when the great Daos were right in front of them, it seemed to be covered by a thin film. It was the same here. However, although the great Daos of the two-realm battlefield were exposed, there were still some differences. From time to time, there would be complicated patterns floating in the air. They were constantly changing and silent. It really felt like time flowed like water. This was the collision of two completely different nomological laws. They weren't stable, so they were exposed. The more intense the collision, the clearer the profundities of the nomological laws appeared. However, when the nomological laws collided, it was like a battle between two experts. When immortals fought, mortals suffered. Not everyone had the right to watch. However, When the two types of nomological laws collided, not only did they nurture spiritual treasures, but they also created colorful ripples. For a moment, all living things retreated. Even the dead souls and zombies that had already fallen and didn't seem to know fear and were unafraid of death all retreated. Every time these profundities appeared, the surroundings would seem to be purified. A huge hole would suddenly break open, revealing a quiet place. Of course, it would be fine if that was all. After all, even the weakest person here had a cultivation base of a peak divine emperor. However, the most important thing was that the great Daos here were entangled with the boundless murderous aura of the two-realm battlefield. If one wanted to comprehend the profundities of the nomological laws, one must first get rid of this murderous aura. Otherwise, it would only bring harm. And the murderous aura here was not so easy to get rid of. It was formed by the accumulation of more than 100 venerable emperors and an unknown number of divine emperors. In addition, the murderous aura formed by the mutual devouring of the two realms' wills. Even a peak venerable emperor would have a hard time comprehending it, let alone an ordinary person. Alas, I can only see it, but I can't get it. What can I do? Standing in midair, Fang Qingshan's eyes flickered with divine light. He focused his vision and looked at the spirit treasures that were being forcefully taken away. He looked at the fluctuating natural laws. It was truly dazzling and made his heart yearn for it. But he couldn't do anything about it. Fine, fine. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's not meant to be, I can't force it. I'd better go and earn war credits. Thinking of this, Fang Qingshan immediately stopped thinking. Of course, the two-realm battlefield was so dangerous. Although Fang Qingshan was not weaker than others, he would not seek his own death. Therefore, he was going to the battlefield that was specially created for divine emperors. Yes, although the two-realm battlefield was a battlefield, it was divided into battle zones to avoid being implicated. After all, the fight between Fang Qingshan and Yin Xieho almost affected the Pangu chaotic world, not to mention the fight between peak venerable emperors, who were much more powerful than them. In the two-realm battlefield, there were 3 battle zones. The first zone was naturally the mildly dangerous zone. Generally speaking, it was the battlefield of divine emperors or those who had just become venerable emperors. The second zone was the battlefield of venerable emperors, from lower venerable emperors to upper venerable emperors. As for the last zone, it was naturally the most dangerous zone. It was specially created for peak venerable emperors and even forbidden venerable emperors to fight. Chapter 1741. Although the two-realm battlefield was divided into 3 battle zones, the last one, which was the taboo battlefield, was basically idle. Except for a few times, almost no one fought there. After all, peak venerable emperors, or even taboo great emperors, were like nuclear weapons. Their deterrence was greater than their fighting power. The main reason was that the destructive power of their fight was too strong. Although this place was not in the two-realm battlefield, it was still a battle zone for them. But that was under the condition that they could hold back. Once they fought, the destructive power would be too great. Then again, for people with low cultivation, one wrong step in the 3 battle zones could lead them into a bottomless abyss. If a divine emperor entered the second battle zone, which was a battle zone for venerable emperors, he would probably die. Even people like Fang Qingshan and Yin Xieho would not dare to think that they could escape unscathed if they enter the third battle zone. As for the third core battle zone, let alone a divine emperor, even an upper-level venerable emperor would not be able to escape. Of course, this did not mean that divine emperors, venerable emperors, and taboo great emperors were absolutely safe in their respective battlefields. No one could guarantee that they would be safe in the outside world, let alone in a dangerous place like the two-realm battlefield, just like in the Pangu chaotic world. Logically speaking, Fang Qingshan was powerful enough to dominate the world, but in the end, he almost failed miserably. Although there were clear instructions that venerable emperors could not enter the divine emperor battlefield, and taboo martial artists could not enter the emperor battlefield, this restriction only applied to the weak. It did not have much effect on the strong. What if there really was a two-faced, venerable sovereign who attacked the divine emperor and killed him? Would he pay for it with his life? However, although it was not absolute, it could be relatively safe. After all, this was a battlefield, and venerable emperors requested to serve here. However, they were only fighting for resources and not sending others to their deaths. So, in general, they could guarantee fairness and safety. With Fang Qingshan's cultivation, he could actually enter the middle battle zone, which was prepared for venerable emperors. After all, he had the fighting power of a venerable emperor before merging with Xing Yi Great Emperor's source and real spirit. After fighting with the Yin Xiaohou, his foundation became unstable and there were many internal injuries on his body. But at the same time, it had pushed his strength one step further towards the venerable sovereign realm. He was not a venerable emperor, but he was better than a venerable emperor. His cultivation also broke through to the half-step emperor realm uncontrollably. If it weren't for the fact that breaking through to venerable sovereign required a flash of inspiration, he would have broken through to venerable sovereign the moment he merged with the source of Xing Yi Great Emperor. However, even without a breakthrough, Fang Qingshan wasn't afraid of facing a lower-level venerable emperor, as long as it wasn't a top-level great emperor. Even if he couldn't defeat a middle-level venerable emperor, he wouldn't have a problem staying alive. Even so, Fang Qingshan wasn't prepared to enter it now. Rice must be eaten bite by bite, and the road must be walked step by step. Not to mention that he still had problems with his body, just entering a new environment and possibly facing opponents from the little Hongmeng world, which was different from the myriad worlds. Fang Qingshan couldn't let his guard down. Before entering the war zone and killing opponents from the little Hongmeng world to earn battle merits, Fang Qingshan had to go to the Supreme Alliance's stronghold to register. Only by clarifying one's identity and obtaining a token to collect battle merits would one be able to smoothly earn battle merits. Otherwise, how could he determine the battle merits? Was he supposed to behead people and cut off their ears like in the mortal world? What if someone cheated? What if someone stole it by force? What if... Therefore, the first thing Fang Qingshan had to do was to clear his black account. After determining the direction, Fang Qingshan drove the timeless arc to the Supreme Alliance's stronghold. With the strength of the timeless arc, and the fact that this was the periphery of the two-realm battlefield. Therefore, although it was dangerous along the way, in the nine heavens, strong winds howled from time to time, lightning flashed everywhere, and stars shone brightly like fireworks. On the ground, hundreds of ghosts walked in the night, wailing. Waves of blood filled the sky, and chilly winds howled. Heaven and earth collided and intersected. From time to time, destructive void ripples would erupt, rushing in all directions like a tidal wave. From afar, it looked like the end of the world. Under such terrifying might, ordinary deity emperors would die instantly upon touching it. Fortunately, the power of the timeless arc was extraordinary. When the feather of freedom flapped, it was like a traveler without boundaries, as though it was walking in the gap of time and space, free and unfettered. In addition, the red hellfire lotus, the great void god armor, and the concealment of the hibernation pearl. Fang Qingshan arrived at his destination without any mishaps along the way. The closer he got to the center of the two-realm battlefield, the more Fang Qingshan could feel the bitterness of the battlefield. Desolate, cruel, cold. If it was an ordinary person, or even a primordial immortal realm cultivator, they would probably go crazy without any special means. The atmosphere was too depressing. And the closer he got to the center, the more he could feel the suppression of heaven and earth. This kind of suppression wasn't something that could be adapted to in a short time. At the very least, you had to have some understanding of the laws of this world. But as mentioned before, although the laws here were exposed, they were mixed with the evil energy of heaven and earth. Even a peak Emperor Venerable would find it troublesome to comprehend them. Fortunately, there were seniors who had already prepared corresponding countermeasures for this situation. Every newcomer to the two-realm battlefield would be explained to them by experts who had already adapted to the new laws here. This way, not only could they save their own time to comprehend, but the person explaining wouldn't suffer a loss. After all, they could also get battle merits. Therefore, when entering the battlefield, one had to go to the stronghold first. Not only did they have to go through identity verification, but they could also adapt to the new environment here as quickly as possible. Putting all this aside, Fang Qingshan drove the timeless ark toward the supreme Alliance stronghold. At a certain moment, the timeless ark, which was hidden in the void and walking in the space-time gap, suddenly seemed to be rejected by heaven and earth, and it couldn't help but reveal its original form. Fang Qingshan, who was in the timeless ark, felt a suffocating pressure. At this moment, the defense of the timeless ark seemed to be completely defenseless. He was locked on by someone's spirit. A cold, iron-blooded, and extremely cold aura rushed toward him, as if he would be attacked immediately if he made the slightest movement. Although this aura wasn't comparable to that of old ancestor Tianxie or two-faced Emperor Venerable, it was definitely not inferior to the feeling he got from Xingyi Emperor. Obviously, the one who had locked on to Fang Qingshan was an upper level or even a peak Emperor Venerable. Chapter 1742. I can't be that unlucky, can I? Fang Qingshan wanted to cry, but had no tears. He had never expected that he would encounter a peak emperor on the outskirts of the two-realm battlefield, even before he had entered the battlefield's perimeter. He had never expected that his life would be in danger and he would encounter another peak emperor. Although he couldn't say that the person in front of him was comparable to the two-faced Emperor Venerable and evil old ancestor, he was at least not weaker than the Xingyi Emperor. What was different from the Xingyi Emperor was that the person in front of him was not the Xingyi Emperor who was weaker than a chicken. He was at his peak. If it was just a lower-level Emperor Venerable, Fang Qingshan would even dare to take a gamble. Although a middle-level Emperor Venerable was strong, he still had the power to fight. Even if he couldn't win, he could escape. As for upper-level Emperor Venerable, the gap between them was too big. Fang Qingshan didn't have the slightest confidence, not to mention a peak Emperor Venerable. It was really an unlucky year. He didn't check the almanac before he went out. He was extremely unlucky. I won't die before I succeed, will I? Who are you? Why are you here? What are you doing? Just as thousands of thoughts were going through Fang Qingshan's mind, a cold voice rang out. This was actually a guardian guarding the Supreme Alliance's stronghold. The battlefield didn't only have the front battlefield, but also the enemy's rear. Naturally, they had to guard against the enemy's decapitation plan and attack the enemy's base. In fact, if Fang Qingshan hadn't come from the direction of the boundless void, he would have been greeted with a thunderous attack instead of a question. The reason for this was that under normal circumstances, people who came to the two-realm battlefield were recruited or led by someone. But Fang Qingshan didn't have anything, and he was sneakily hiding his tracks. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew that someone might accidentally enter the two-realm battlefield, and that Fang Qingshan didn't seem to be a threat, things would be hard to say. Phew! As the question rang out, the spirit on Fang Qingshan's body retracted. Only then did Fang Qingshan breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, as long as he didn't make a move without saying anything, everything would be fine. Not daring to delay, Fang Qingshan hurriedly walked out of the timeless Arkansas. He cupped his hands towards the void and said, Fang Qingshan of the Tao will sect greets Senior. Tao will sect? Fang Qingshan? The first divine emperor? Hearing Fang Qingshan's words, the voice in the void was surprised, and then a figure appeared. This person looked like a middle-aged man from the ancient times. He wore a beast robe, revealing his long and muscular arms. He carried a long spear on his back. He had a suffocating, baleful aura unique to the two-realm battlefield. Unfathomable. As soon as this person appeared, Fang Qingshan's gaze had instantly descended onto him. Fang Qingshan didn't use the last days to spy on him, but he sensed carefully for a while. However, he didn't notice anything, and it was as if this person was an ordinary person. If it weren't for the fact that he had forced the eternal heavenly vessel out of the void, and that his nascent spirit had locked onto Fang Qingshan, as well as the suffocating murderous aura around him, Fong Qingshan probably wouldn't have even spared him a second glance. In fact, he might have even subconsciously ignored him. But it was precisely because of this that this person seemed terrifying. "That's me." Fong Qingshan hurriedly nodded when he heard the person's question. "You haven't broken through to the sovereign realm, so why have you come here now? Moreover, how did you find out the location of the two-realm battlefield?" The person was slightly puzzled because he hadn't seen Fong Qingshan in the past, but he sensed a familiar feeling from Fong Qingshan. Only after hearing Fong Qingshan's introduction did he suddenly realize something. Although Fong Qingshan hadn't broken through to the sovereign realm, he wasn't a nobody in the all heavens, even among the sovereign realm. After all, the Xingyi martial emperor had died because of him, and the heavens and the earth had cried for him. In the tidal tower, 2 divine emperors had been defeated, and the number 1 divine emperor had fallen into his hands. Then, not long ago, the heavenly evil ancestor had fought, and the 2 sovereign realm origin wills had confronted each other. Even when he had fought with the evil marquis, he had exposed the heavenly evil ancestral artifact, the heavenly evil altar, and the everlasting lotus. Everything he did left a deep impression on the other venerable sovereigns. Therefore, when Fong Qingshan introduced himself, the person immediately remembered who he was. "Oh, by the way, it's because of the All Heavens Patrol, isn't it? Moreover, your cultivation has almost reached the peak of the Divine Emperor realm, and you're no weaker than a sovereign realm, so you want to come here to train yourself." Before Fong Qingshan could answer, the person had already guessed what he was thinking. Yes. What else could Fong Qingshan say? He could only nod. That's right. It was unknown whether this person wanted to make friends with Fong Qingshan in advance, or he had a good impression of him. After all, there are not many people who could come to the two-realm battlefield on their own initiative, or he was happy that there was one more expert in the two-realm battlefield. Therefore, he nodded and introduced himself. "I'm from the Wasteland Tribe, the Wasteland Tribe." Hearing this, Fong Qingshan's eyes narrowed. Although he had already known from the previous details that this person was not ordinary. But after hearing this person's self-introduction, he could not help but tremble. The Wasteland Tribe. Although this name sounded old-fashioned, its strength and influence were real. Even when the Dowell School was at its peak, it was ranked 55th on the Supreme Forces list. As for the Wasteland Emperor, he was even more extraordinary. His cultivation had reached the peak of the sovereign realm. Although he was not as powerful as the heavenly evil ancestor or the two-faced sovereign realm emperor, he was even more powerful than the Xingyi emperor at his peak. Fong Qingshan did not expect that he would be the first person he met as soon as he entered the two-realm battlefield. In fact, what Fong Qingshan didn't know was that the problem of this matter was also with him. The timeless arc had reached the peak of the immortal realm, and the power of the hibernation orb and other divine furnace units had been fully developed. Even ordinary sovereign realm emperors would not be able to find traces of Fong Qingshan. It was precisely because of this that the Wasteland Monarch had taken notice of the Wasteland Monarch. Otherwise, with the patrols around, how could the Wasteland Monarch possibly send out the Wasteland Monarch? Putting this aside, after exchanging a few pleasantries, the Wasteland Emperor asked Fong Qingshan to go to the stronghold by himself and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Fong Qingshan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Although the Wasteland Emperor did not have any malicious intentions towards him, Fong Qingshan was not afraid. After all, the gap between his cultivation and the Wasteland Emperor's was too big. Even though the Wasteland Emperor was restraining himself, Fong Qingshan still felt pressured when he was with him. After calming himself down, Fong Qingshan continued to drive the timeless arc to the stronghold. This time, he didn't hide his tracks anymore. Instead, he traveled openly. Firstly, he was afraid that if he met someone like the Wasteland Emperor again, he would be regarded as a person with bad intentions. Secondly, the Wasteland Emperor had given him the guide. With the right path, he did not need to be afraid of encountering unexpected situations. Chapter 1743. Because Fong Qingshan did not hide his whereabouts, it was inevitable that he would encounter patrol teams in the process of advancing. Generally speaking, These people were led by ordinary venerable emperors, and the others were all peak divine emperors. If they were outside, they would all be great figures. But here, they were only patrolling. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan had the passage token that the Manchurian Heavenly Emperor had given him, so he was unobstructed all along the way. Just like that, after a while, Fang Qingshan sensed a powerful aura spreading in all directions from afar. Strands of it were distributed in the air and intertwined with each other, forming an invisible net that covered the space within 1,000,000 kilometers and even further away. All movements were monitored by this net. Fang Qingshan's body immediately tensed up. This feeling was almost the same as when he'd been targeted by the Manchurian Heavenly Emperor. The only difference was that one was specifically targeted, while this one was indiscriminately stalking. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan had heard about it from the Great Emperor of Wasteland before. In addition to the records in the Xingyi Great Emperor's memory and the Dao Sex Dao Palace, he knew that this was the effect of the net above snares. Therefore, even though he felt a little uncomfortable, he didn't mind it. On the other hand, the faraway stronghold was an eye-opener for Fang Qingshan. It was a huge city. Yes, other than the pressure, the first impression the settlement gave Fang Qingshan was that it was huge. It connected the heavens and the earth, and it was difficult to see through it with one's eyes. The reason why it was so big, apart from its grandeur and suppression, was that it had to be taken into account that some races' main bodies were too big. Thus, regardless of whether it was the city or the buildings within the city, every single one of them was extremely enormous. They stood tall and towered between the heavens and the earth. What a huge city! Fang Qingshan sighed. The eastern giant city that he had seen in the merchant chaotic world was undoubtedly insignificant compared to it. Moreover, this city was not only large, but it was also extremely aggressive. Obviously, this city was also a treasure. Moreover, it was a treasure at the pinnacle of the 4th level. It was probably comparable to the heavenly evil ancestral artifact. It was a war weapon specially created by Supreme Alliance. Although it was called a city, it was more like a fortress. Once it started preparing for war, it would bare its fangs and could even suppress a peak emperor to death, running a horse to death. From the time Fang Qingshan saw the huge city to the time he arrived at the city gate, a long time had passed even with his speed. Arriving at the city gates, Zhang Xian raised his head and saw 2 ancient symbols. God Emperor. This was a base built specifically for God Emperors. Naturally, it was the Divine Imperial City. Apart from the Divine Imperial City, there were imperial cities built for venerable sovereigns and forbidden cities built for peak venerable sovereigns and forbidden emperors. After showing Fang Qingshan the travel permit of the Manchurian Heavenly Emperor, someone came to receive him. However, during this period of time, there was a commotion after they found out that he was Fang Qingshan. After all, the celebrity effect existed everywhere. Fang Qingshan's name was well known across the universe, especially among the God Emperors. After all, whether it was the title of the most powerful God Emperor, the fact that Emperor Xingyi died in his hands, or that he had fought against the God Emperor and Marquis Yin Xie twice, Zhang Xian was like the sun at high noon. But this time, there was no drama of scholars belittling each other. That being said, many people were still eager to have a go, wanting to fight against Fang Qingshan. The experience alone was praiseworthy, not for the outcome. As for the loss of luck after failure, none of the God Emperors that could come to the battlefield of 2 universes would care about this bit of luck. It was not a fight of life and death, just a practice. Besides, compared to the experience gained from fighting against Fang Qingshan, the loss of luck was more beneficial than detrimental. Fang Qingshan, of course, would not refuse anyone. He came to the battlefield of 2 universes not only for merits and opportunities, but also to fight against others. The man was in love, and the concubine was interested. Naturally, they hit it off. For a time, Fang Qingshan was not in a hurry to head to the battlefield to kill the people from the Little Hongmeng world. Instead, he focused on fighting against others in the stronghold. Firstly, to do a good job, one must first sharpen his tools. If he wanted to obtain merits, he naturally had to be prepared. Although his injuries from fighting with Marquis Xie had healed, he had not completely digested Emperor Xingyi's origin energy. If he wanted to digest it, what could be faster than fighting? Opponents were hard to come by. Although the god emperors that could come here could not be compared to him, none of them were easy to deal with. Since he could do in the stronghold, why would he take the risk? Moreover, besides fighting against others, it was more important for Fang Qingshan to listen to the Tao, comprehend the unique great Tao of the two-realm battlefield, and transform his aura. Otherwise, he would only be able to display 70% of his strength. If he encountered people from the Little Hongmeng world, he would be restrained and might even fail miserably. The people in charge of the stronghold did not care about this and did not rush him. After all, Fang Qingshan had come here voluntarily, so he would receive special treatment. Moreover, as long as they were not preparing for war, the management was very lax. Therefore, Fang Qingshan listened to the preaching and fought against others at the same time. It was unknown whether it was because battle was the best teacher, or because Fang Qingshan's comprehension ability was superb, or because the person preaching the Tao did not hide anything. But Fang Qingshan's speed of changing his aura was several times faster than the others. He only spent about a month to completely adapt to the laws of the two-realm battlefield. At the same time, Fang Qingshan made many friends here because he did not fight. He also learned many things about the two-realm battlefield from them. Although he had the memories of the Emperor, which were also recorded in the Tao Palace, the Emperor was an expert when he came here. However, when the former came here, he was already an expert and had the cultivation of an upper-level sovereign. The records of the Emperor were a little secretive. Therefore, Fang Qingshan gained a lot from these people. First of all, although he was the #1 divine emperor, he did not go to the emperor-level battlefield. But this did not mean that he was absolutely safe. After all, he was only the #1 divine emperor in the universe, not the #1 divine emperor in the Little Hongmeng world. In terms of comparing the strength of the two worlds, the universe was still at a slight disadvantage. Moreover, the supreme palace of the Little Hongmeng world was the dominant force, so they had a stronger control over the world. Therefore, they sent more people to the two-realm battlefield. Although many of them were cannon fodder, it did not mean that the weak could not defeat the strong. After all, quantitative change could also lead to qualitative change. Moreover, the Little Hongmeng world was different from the universe. Their methods could not be easily ignored. In addition, although the Supreme Alliance of the two worlds and the Supreme Palace had an agreement that emperors could not enter the Divine Emperor battleground. But even so, there must be people who wanted to fish in troubled waters. After all, the world was big and full of strange things. There might be people who could hide from the world. After all, killing divine emperors was definitely much easier than killing emperors. Chapter 1744. Although the merit gained from killing a divine emperor was certainly less than that of killing a venerable emperor. But it was not easy to kill a venerable emperor. Even a medium venerable emperor who was one level higher, such as a lower venerable emperor, might not be able to defeat a venerable emperor. After all, no one knew if the other party had any trump cards. Therefore, over the years, although many venerable emperors had died in the two-realm battlefield, the number was no less than 3 digits. As for the exact number, no one knew. But this was the result of the accumulation of time. Moreover, many venerable emperors had died because they were implicated rather than killed in a head-on battle. But it was completely different for a venerable emperor to kill a divine emperor. Except for a few people like Fang Qingshan, Two-Faced Divine Emperor, and Yin Xieho, it was almost impossible for them to counterattack, even if they were given a level 4 Supreme Treasure. After all, it was not easy to activate a level 4 Supreme Treasure. Not to mention whether you could activate it or not, the time it took to activate it was enough for your opponent to kill you. Therefore, although killing a divine emperor would give less merit, it could be accumulated. Because of this, it was clearly stipulated that venerable emperors could not enter the divine emperor battlefield. Forbidden emperors could not enter the divine emperor battlefield. This was to reduce the possibility of bullying the weak. After all, it was too dangerous for the people in this circle to have a superior expert hiding in the divine emperor battlefield, pretending to be weak. Even if he did not kill anyone, just the thought of such a person in the divine emperor battlefield was enough to make people panic and feel uneasy. However, although it was stipulated, it was not forbidden. Nothing was absolute. There were policies at the top and countermeasures at the bottom. Compared to the benefits that could be obtained, taking some risks was obviously very tempting. This was especially so for those who were conceited enough to deceive the world. They were even more willing to take the risk. Therefore, merit was not so easy to earn. Especially when it came to killing people, it was like licking blood on the tip of a knife. If one was not careful, one would fail miserably. Those who killed people would be killed. If one wanted to kill others, one had to be prepared to be killed. However, although it was dangerous to kill people, the reward was also high. This was the so-called high risk, high reward. Of course, killing wasn't the only way to obtain merit points. In addition to hunting down the enemy's troops, they could also complete some missions to obtain merit points. For example, the person who guided Fang Qingshan and preached the Tao to him would be rewarded with some merit points. Another example was the patrol team that Fang Qingshan had encountered before he arrived. There were also merits to be gained. There were also those who could infiltrate the enemy's ranks and obtain information. They could also obtain merit points. However, it wasn't impossible to obtain merit points through completing missions, but it would take up too much time and energy. However, this method was more reliable. Unfortunately, there were too many monks and not enough meat. The missions were not endless. Without newcomers, there would be no guide, no preaching, and no meritorious service. Patrolling was the same. As long as there was a fixed number of people patrolling in shifts, it would be fine. As for hiding, who knew how long it would take? That aside, what Fang Qingshan did not know was that as he stepped into the divine imperial city, his name had appeared on the hunting list of the Little Hongmeng universe. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will emerge victorious in every battle. In a battle, information was crucial. Therefore, whether it was the Supreme Alliance or the Little Hongmeng universe, both sides could gather information on each other, no matter how big or small. Not to mention that Fang Qingshan had openly invited warriors to fight in the divine imperial city. His arrival could not be kept a secret unless it was done on purpose. It was said that those who killed would be killed. He had not killed anyone yet, and others were already targeting him. This was normal. If it were the Little Hongmeng universe, a powerful warrior would also be targeted by the Supreme Alliance. After all, he was the #1 emperor. Killing him would be a blow to morale, and the Supreme Alliance could collect a lot of fortune. Besides, leaving such a powerful warrior on the battlefield would be a great threat to the Supreme Alliance. Therefore, before Fang Qingshan entered the divine imperial city, the news of his arrival had already reached the table of the higher-ups of the Palace of Supremacy. The reason for this was that Emperor of Barbarian Desolation had seen through Fang Qingshan's concealment. Otherwise, at least before he entered the divine imperial city, Fang Qingshan would not have been exposed. Massacred the imperial city. In a conference hall, several great emperors who were guarding the area sat around them. The universes had the divine imperial city, while the Little Hongmeng universe had massacred the imperial city. They were competing against each other. At the moment, all the information about Fang Qingshan was laid out in front of them. It even included some of Fang Qingshan's experiences in the Desolation Hall. There must be many things that Fang Qingshan himself had forgotten, but they were clearly recorded. It was horrifying. If it were not for the fact that the effect of the universal chessboard had been concealed, the fact that he could travel to different worlds would have been exposed. What do you mean? At a certain moment, after going through Fang Qingshan's record, one of them spoke up. What else can I say? Kill him. That's right, the #1 emperor. What a title. Another's hero is my enemy. Kill him. Killing Fang Qingshan will not only undermine the enemy's morale, but also deprive him of his fortune and protect us. This is killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Everyone had the same opinion about Fang Qingshan. Therefore, The next moment, his name appeared at the top of the Imperial City's mission list, the hunting list. For a moment, everyone from the Palace of Supremacy was on the move. Fang Qingshan had made a name for himself in the universe, especially when he challenged the heroes in the divine Imperial City. He was recognized as the #1 emperor. That being said, the Palace of Supremacy didn't think this was the case. After all, the Little Hongmeng universe was stronger than the other universes in terms of overall strength and force. When fighting at the same level, apart from a few, the Little Hongmeng universe would have the upper hand. Therefore, they were not afraid of Fang Qingshan. On the contrary, they wanted to use Fang Qingshan as a stepping stone. After all, be it the spoils of war obtained from killing Fang Qingshan, just the rewards from the hunting list and mission list alone were enough to make one drool. Fang Qingshan knew nothing about this. Even if he did, he wouldn't care. It wasn't because he was arrogant, but because he was confident. He had never been afraid of anyone at the same level. Even if he was besieged, as long as the number was not large enough, he was not afraid. As for being besieged by hundreds or even thousands of people, did they think that all the Supreme Alliance members were dead? What about venerable sovereigns? Fang Qingshan wasn't worried. Even if they had the means to deceive others, they couldn't be more powerful than upper venerable sovereigns. If that was the case, what was there to be afraid of? As long as he didn't let his guard down, he was more than happy to have these people come. After all, to him, these people were all meritorious deeds, opportunities. Chapter 1745. The more capable, the bolder. That was what Fang Qingshan was talking about. If others knew that they were about to be ambushed, they might not panic, but at least they would know how to avoid harm. But Fang Qingshan did not think so. Just like last time, when Emperor of Xingyi tried to possess him, Su Ping planned to beat him at his own game. Of course, Su Ping was confident in his abilities. Given his abilities, even if he were to be besieged, ambushed, or deceived by a venerable emperor at the Divine Imperial Theater of Operations, Su Ping could protect himself as long as he wanted to leave. For others, in the battlefield of the two universes, some might value merits more, and some might just be here to waste time. They would leave after serving their time. Some would value the environment more. After all, as long as they could get used to the laws of nature here, the entire battlefield would be a blessed place for cultivation. However, for Fang Qingshan, even though he placed more emphasis on merits, he also placed more emphasis on the training within. This was the case for Su Ping and for Mosquito Dowrin. Let's talk about himself first. During his stay in the Divine Imperial City, Fang Qingshan had fought against no less than 100 peak divine emperors. Some of them were strong, but those who could survive in the battlefield of the two universes all had some unique skills, which was an eye-opener for Fang Qingshan. Sparring with them not only allowed Fang Qingshan to gain more experience, but also allowed the Xingyi martial emperor's origin energy to be digested faster. Fang Qingshan had gradually adapted to the explosive increase in power in his body. His injuries had also completely healed, and the excess power was once again sealed up by him. Even so, Fang Qingshan could feel that he was getting closer to the venerable emperor realm, as if he could make the breakthrough at any moment. If it were not for the fact that he tried his best to suppress it, he might have reached the venerable emperor realm by now. That being said, once he reached the venerable emperor realm, Fang Qingshan's abilities would experience another drastic change. At that time, even Fang Qingshan's breakthrough wouldn't be like the breakthrough from Origin Immortal Realm to Immortal Realm, or the breakthrough from Immortal Realm to God Emperor. However, even if it was just an ordinary breakthrough and he reached the early stage Emperor Realm, Fang Qingshan's cultivation base might not be comparable to an upper stage Emperor, but if he fought against an intermediate stage Emperor, as long as he didn't run into a particularly difficult opponent, he would basically be able to protect himself. This did not include the power of the Timeless Arkansas. Because of the stone gambling skill, the compensation from the eternal ancient heaven gate, and the treasures from the Tao Will Sec's secret storehouse, Wang Chang's heart was filled with excitement. Timeless Ark had reached the peak of Immortal Realm for a long time. He could break through at any time. Once the timeless arc broke through to the ancient grade, its combat prowess would also increase exponentially. Even if Fang Qingshan didn't break through to Venerable Sovereign, with the ancient era's timeless arc's combat prowess, he would be able to escape unscathed from a high-level Venerable Sovereign. If he were to add his own strength to the mix, the two would be superimposed, and it would be 1 + 1 greater than 2. It was just that, like Fang Qingshan, because he broke through too quickly, his foundation wasn't as deep. Although he could break through now, the gains obviously didn't make up for the losses. After all, the transformation of the timeless arc required the eternal blessing to push the final step, but before that, he would also need to consume his own strength to complete the transformation. If he didn't do this, he would have to consume the power of the eternal blessing. And the timeless arc's foundation had been exhausted when it broke through to the immortal grade last time. Now, although he had collected some resources from Pangu's chaotic world, it was obviously not enough for the timeless arc to complete the breakthrough. Of course, more importantly, Fang Qingshan hadn't had time to build the framework for the All Heavens Dao verification techniques Emperor chapter. If he missed this opportunity, it would be difficult to perfect the Emperor chapter. Therefore now, Fang Qingshan wasn't in a hurry to break through. He wasn't going to take the path of a quick breakthrough. Instead, he was going to keep consolidating his foundation until he reached the point where he had to break through. Although the time it took him to break through to the immortal grade and the Divine Emperor seemed to be shorter than when he broke through to the origin grade, this only showed that his foundation was more solid. Another reason was that Fang Qingshan couldn't break through now was the problem of merit. Everyone knew that if he wanted to get merit quickly, he could only do it in the Divine Emperor battle zone. After all, if one wanted to kill a Venerable Emperor in the Venerable Emperor theater of operations, one might not succeed even once in thousands or even tens of thousands of years. Otherwise, there would not be so many Venerable Emperors who would take the risk and sneak into the Divine Emperor theater of operations to bully the weak. If Fang Qingshan broke through to the Venerable Emperor battle zone, his strength wouldn't be lower than many high-level Venerable Emperors. But obviously, he couldn't stay in the Divine Emperor battle zone anymore. Once he entered the Emperor battle zone, it wouldn't be so easy to get merit. Even if his strength wasn't lower than high-level Venerable Emperors, it wouldn't be so easy to kill a Venerable Emperor. After all, Fang Qingshan had already attracted a lot of attention and was being targeted. Once he broke through to the Venerable Emperor battle zone, his every move would be magnified infinitely, and there would be special people watching him. Once he made a move, he would be besieged by several high-level Venerable Emperors. At that time, even if he didn't have any problems, it would also delay him from getting merit. Fang Qingshan didn't lack tricks to deceive others, but this kind of trick was only suitable for shooting in secret. It was okay to collect a little, but once he collected a lot, he would be exposed immediately. If it was someone else, it would be fine. As long as he was not caught in front of others, everyone would turn a blind eye to it. After all, everyone was doing this. If you could deceive others, it was because you were capable. But it was different for Fang Qingshan. If the Supreme Palace really looked into it, even the Supreme Alliance wouldn't be able to protect him. After all, this agreement was made by both sides. Even if there were unspoken rules were unspoken rules and would never be seen in public. If they didn't look into it, it would be fine, but once they did, there would be problems. Moreover, if his side didn't keep the agreement, the other side could also break the agreement. In a situation where the all heavens and realms were still in a weak position, once the two sides quarreled, it would be his side that would suffer. In the end, even if he didn't kill Ma Su in tears, Fang Qingshan probably wouldn't have an easy time. Therefore, for Fang Qingshan, a breakthrough now would do more harm than good. Therefore, before he accumulated enough merit, Fang Qingshan didn't plan to make a breakthrough. And once he accumulated enough merit, he would probably be able to satisfy the previous conditions, such as inviting heroes to battle, digesting the origin, and having to break through. At the same time, if he obtained enough merit, he would also get enough luck. After all, killing one person in all heavens was a crime, but killing millions here was a crime. At that time, It would be enough to upgrade the All-Heavens chessboard and develop his stone gambling skill. And when he had enough merit, he could use it to exchange for 4th-level treasures from the Supreme Alliance's treasury. Chapter 1746. Level 4 Supreme treasures might be rare in other places, especially those suitable for the timeless arc and Fong Qingshan's liking. But here, they might not be everywhere, but as long as one had enough merit points, it wouldn't be a problem to exchange for a dozen of them. Fong Qingshan didn't enter the Merit Hall because he didn't have any merit points, so he didn't know the specifics when he saw the Supreme Alliance treasury. However, a single glance was enough to tell the whole picture. From the covetous expressions of the others, as well as the regret of not being able to sweep away all the treasures in one go, he was able to learn a lot of details. The Supreme Alliance treasury was indeed the foundation of the two-realm battlefield. There were many precious things inside that were useful even for peak Emperor Venerables. In fact, this was normal. After all, this was the two-realm battlefield, the intersection of the Little Hongmeng world and the myriad worlds. Heaven and earth collided, and the laws merged. Naturally, many supreme treasures would be born. When the Pan-Gu chaotic world first opened, it produced Heaven's Splitting Axe, Creation Green Lotus, Creation Jade Plate, Chaos Bead, Dao Eye, and other peak level 3 supreme treasures. In terms of grade, the two-realm battlefield was much higher than the Pan-Gu chaotic world. The gap between them was as big as the gap between Divine Emperors and Emperor Venerables. Not to mention level 3 or level 4 supreme treasures. There might even be peak level 4 supreme treasures, or even treasures like the Heavenly Evil Ancestral Artifact. However, it was still very expensive. Even among peak Emperor Venerables, very few people were able to exchange for the things they wanted. After all, the higher the grade, the more merit points were needed to exchange for it. Fortunately, although these things were good, they weren't that important to Fong Qingshan. Putting aside the merit points and the fact that he couldn't use them now, this could be seen from the fact that Yin Xieho could have directly summoned the Heavenly Evil Ancestral Artifact, but he didn't do so. A bird in hand was better than 1,000 birds in the bush. He was even prepared to give up the World Tree clone, let alone the others. Instead of coveting other supreme treasures, it was better to develop his all-heaven chessboard in the timeless Arkansas. After all, although these two items might not be comparable to those supreme treasures that had already reached the forbidden grade, it was highly possible that they would surpass them in the future. Therefore, instead of neglecting the essentials and focusing on trifles, it was better to give up on those unrealistic ideas from the very beginning. He only focused on obtaining early-stage level 4 treasures. This grade was naturally rare and precious in the All Heavens, but it was a completely different scene here. With Fong Qingshan's means and strength, it was not difficult for him to earn enough merit points to exchange for an early-stage level 4 supreme treasure. Although he had the stone gambling skill, this skill also required the support of luck, and there were many uncertainties. It was possible that the supreme treasure would not reach the 4th grade. It was possible that the supreme treasure would surpass the early 4th grade. It was also possible that the supreme treasure would not be special enough and its effects would be mediocre. It was even possible that the supreme treasure would be, but it was different here. As long as he had enough merit points, there were plenty of grade 4 treasures for Fong Qingshan to choose from. He would be able to pick out the treasures that met the requirements faster and better. As for the supreme treasures above level, for that the timeless arc needed to advance from the ancient era to the eternal era, Fong Qingshan did not think about exchanging here. It was not that he did not want to, but it was useless even if he wanted to. Several level 4 lower grade supreme treasures were not as valuable as a level 4 medium grade supreme treasure. The merit points needed to exchange between the two would be many times higher. Even an upper-level venerable emperor with years of experience would not be able to exchange for one, and the merit points that Fong Qingshan could earn would probably only be in the Divine Emperor battle zone. With his strength as the first Divine Emperor, even if he could not sweep the entire battlefield, he could come and go as he pleased. It should not be a problem for him to exchange for a few early-stage level 4 supreme treasures. But it would be beyond his ability to exchange for those above level 4 medium-grade supreme treasures. Of course, in addition to this, the two-realm battlefield was a treasure land not only for Fong Qingshan, but also for Mosquito Dowren. After all, Mosquito Dowren was cultivating the laws of blood, devouring, and killing. He was like a fish in water on the battlefield. Given Mosquito Dowren's talent, he could keep up with Fong Qingshan by devouring as much as he wanted. On the other hand, the clone of the Tree of World was troublesome. As Fong Qingshan's cultivation grew higher, the effect of the Tree of World grew weaker. Even though Fong Qingshan had helped the Tree of World a lot, the gap between Fong Qingshan and the Tree of World was widening. After all, the Tree of World was just a root of chaos, similar to Yang Mei's real body. The Tree of World's foundation was there. Becoming a venerable emperor would be the limit. Of course, it did not mean that he could not break the limit. It was just that the resources required would be horrifying. The loss outweighed the gain. Therefore, Fong Qingshan was considering if he should give up on the clone. Usually, Fong Qingshan would be in the arenas specially set up in the Divine Imperial City, inviting the warriors to fight. However, in recent days, he began to cultivate. It was not that Fong Qingshan was on the verge of a breakthrough. It was because he was ready to leave the Divine Imperial City. He had completely familiarized himself with the laws of the Two Realms battlefield. He had dealt with the abnormalities in his body. After fighting with over 100 warriors, he had gained a lot of experience. What he needed to do now was to take a good rest so that his essence, chi, and spirit were at the peak. Then, he would enter the theater and begin to plan for merit points. Fong Qingshan did not know that because of him, the little world of World was in turmoil. That being said, he did not have to think to know that the battlefield was full of danger. Therefore, he must face everything in his best state. His every move was noticed by those with ulterior motives, especially those from the Palace of Supremacy. Seeing that he was about to leave the Divine Imperial City, those people naturally took action. It wasn't possible for Supreme Alliance to be oblivious to this. That being said, there was nothing they could do to help. They could only remind Fong Qingshan to be careful. At most, they could keep an eye on the great Emperor Realm warriors of the Palace of Supremacy. There was nothing else they could do. In the end, if you rely on a mountain, the mountain will fall. If you rely on water, the water will flow. If you rely on people, you can only rely on yourself. What was more, which powerful warrior did not come out of battle? When Fong Qingshan left the Divine Imperial City, he did not pick a time when there were fewer people. Instead, he walked out in a relaxed manner. However, when he rode the timeless arc to the Divine Imperial battleground, he took out the hibernation bead and strings of cause and effect at once. He hid his chi and energy, disturbed destiny, and hid in the dark. He changed his route, and his whereabouts were uncertain. That being said, as the righteous rose 1 foot, the wicked rose 10. In order to better deal with Fong Qingshan, the Palace of Supremacy had already anticipated this situation. They had come up with countermeasures to deal with this kind of concealment method. Therefore, as cautious as Fong Qingshan was, he soon realized that he was being watched. He felt a sense of danger. Fong Qingshan was not afraid at all. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.